Far out. What am I doing with my life? Alright, let's get some beats up. 2 minutes till restart. There we go. Alright. Hey Sultan. Man, I'm pumped for the league announcement. I been working on a build. Yeah, I've been working on a league starter guide for EK Ignite, but I'll see what new skills they have because I might want to gamble again this league and play new skills. VF Totem worked really well last week. Oh shit. Hey Nick, how's it going, man? Sorry, just double check that audio is not too loud. There we go. Hey dude. Getting pumped for the new league announcement in a few hours, or in an hour. But there'll be a curation video up, Necromancers. We'll see what the changes are on the patch notes in an hour actually, so it'll be good to see what's going on. But like they've had an extra month, so you know, arguably we should have some pretty good changes. Last league was actually really good, dude. They rebalanced the stupid Archdam system out of the game, and the game was actually, oh there we go. Should be up in 10 minutes. So currently what I'm working on this is sort of my best estimate of what I want to play based on testing this stage. But yeah. Like EK Ignite seems like a pretty good delve build too. But yeah, I'm keen to see what new skills they're gonna slap us with, because last league what I ended up doing was just playing VF Totem. Yeah, I'm hoping for new skills, man. Like there's already a lot of skills there, but melee balancing and new skills are two things that I want to see in these patch notes. So let me see if it goes. They're adding more teasers into the... Yeah, same man. I've got a Templar tree ready to roll for melee buffing. And like I built like a really good melee build last league with the Jug and also with the Berserker. So if it gets, you know, buffed up, it'll just make that build better. And that was like super defensive with the Jug as well. So this will go down. So like they've announced a few things here just to sort of tease. Yeah, a lot of people do. Like it's definitely limiting when you play stuff like Delve. Totems aren't really Delve compatible, so though I got it like punching at like 250, 300, but it just didn't go. It couldn't sustain Delve. So, and for me, the fun I have in Path of Exile is playing Delve. Like, I don't know what the ideology behind this change was. Like, no one really plays Bestiary. Some people play Bestiary. $20 stack Chaos as well, which is actually a good quality of life change. Come on, bring back a thingamabob. Yeah, opponent up. Ah, yeah. Yeah, if you follow... So, I'm gonna do some build testing over the next week on a couple of different builds and rehash some of my older builds. But that guide that I put up for Crackland still at this stage valid unless otherwise patch notes state. But I'll go back through. I've actually got the day off work today, which is why I'm up at 4:02 in the morning playing Path of Exile. So I'm going to go back through today and revise some of those older guides off the back of the patch notes and then just update them. And I might do like a video for Cracklance and Blazing Salvo because it's the same tree. Yeah, man. The only time I take days off from work are Path of Exile League announcements these days and League launch. So, priorities, dude. Priorities. I'll probably toddle down and get my license renewed later on as well, but yeah. The plan for today is getting the League on League curation out. Yeah, man. I've already got like a list of builds ready to roll. And there's a few creators. There's, funnily enough, I've got one of them I've actually been putting together for the last day. So the EK Ignite that you've been seeing me play, I've actually got a full 10-act leveling guide that I'm going to be putting out today. And that'll come out before the curation. Yeah, man, like, yeah, I need something to do on my days off, otherwise I'd be bored. So I went, oh fuck it, I'll take a day off and work on channel content. Yeah, I know, right? Like every 3 months, and actually everybody at work knows exactly why I'm off today. Like my staff, everybody, they're all like, "Oh, we know what you're doing today," and I'm like, "Yep." But you know, you're entitled to a few weeks of leave a year, so why not use it on Path of Exile is my mindset. But was it next weekend's Easter as well? So Good Friday, Easter. I usually work those like I usually work every Easter, so this year I'm actually not traveling. So I'll be smashing like 3-4 days of Path of Exile flat over the public holidays. It's gonna be great. I'm actually pretty happy about the fact that they changed the schedule and decided to sort of push up the launch days and whatnot. Because yeah, oh sorry, push back the launch by 1 month because it works perfectly on schedule. Yeah, dude, you can link me. I think I've not got links activated on the Twitch, but on the Discord channel, I do. Oh, Bill's gone crazy on the Forge channel. Bill's gone crazy on the Everything channel. General for 4-day weekend for devs and 4-day straight weekend for the league launch next weekend. It's going to be awesome. There's a Filthy Exile Discord linked on the YouTube. I think it's on the Twitch channel as well. If you pop into the Discord, you can post in there. I've just got it limited on the chats and whatnot because I had a lot of spam bots at one point trying to post links. So back up and running. Come on! Come back up! I'm trying to think like what other builds would be worth playing on League launch. So generally when I look for these League starter builds, I'll filter back to one week, the first week of the previous league. So like Toxic Rain, I have no interest in ever playing Toxic Rain builds. I don't find Toxic Rain fun. Kinetic Blast is too tedious to get started. Val Smite's the same. the leveling as well as the gearing required for Val Smite, like these guys at level 100 are just mad. So and it's not even practical, but it's a really boring build and or very expensive. Like, you know, within the first week we're saying getting a Paradoxica is just fucking unrealistic. It's a website down as well. Maybe it's restarted. Nope. What's live? Yeah, I'm gonna do a leveling guide in Blazing Salvo next week, dude. I'm working through so EK knives. There'll be, so you guys have an idea of what's coming out on the curation. +2 radius, yeah. Oh, that's a terrible song. EK Ignite will be on the curation, and the version that I'm going to roll with is a 600. So I filtered through the builds that worked at 600 plus delve. So that's what, if the new skills aren't really appealing, then that's what I'm going to go with. If there's a new skill that looks really cool, then I'm basically going to pull that in, theory craft the living shit out of that, and get it to a point similar to with VF Totems last league, and figure out, see if it works. But in the process of that, yeah, Blazing Salvo and Crack Lance, I'm going to revise those, and I'm going to do a leveling guide, and that'll be over the next week before the league launch. That's it. And I was actually looking at, so I was looking at live streaming the night before last, and I was looking at starting Poison's Concoction just to get it cracking, because there was a really good low depth build for that this league. But I was just too tired. The other thing too, with like the EK Ignite build and everything that I'm putting out will not include anything to do with Mage Bloods and Headhunters, because I don't believe in build methodology around that. I tried Manabon a number of leagues ago, and I might do it this league just for shits and giggles, because it was a really good delve build last league, but it needs a fair bit of investment to get going. I wouldn't recommend it from league start. But outside of that, like Vortex Occultus, I'll be honest with you guys, Vortex Occultus I played for a number of leagues, even last league, and I'm just sort of not with it anymore. I don't have a wig on, man. This is called real hair. Bleed SST and SST does work, but again, SST is a really boring ass build to play. Like this here, I don't know, is this bleed? Oh, this is cold. Like good build, scales well. Seething Fury's much harder to get now, so I don't see the appeal of SST at this stage. Consecrated Path Totems is pretty good. Really easy to get started. You just need a Brutus Lead Sprinkler. The one that I'll be interested to see what the go is with is like Summon SRS, Poison SRS, because that's definitely going to get nerfed. Like, there's no way that's going to walk out unscathed. Except I'm not wearing a wig. Explosive Trap. I never played Explosive Trap, so I can't speak to it. RF, they're never going to be able to nerf RF enough to make RF bad. So RF is still going to be a goer, and I'll probably end up having that on one of the curations that I put out in the next few days. Blade Vortex will work. Announcement is like 50 minutes away. Pretty sure. Path of Exile. Freaking obvious. 48 minutes away. So, depth-wise, 700. I don't even know what that dude was playing to get that low. Where the fuck did he go? Oh, he would have been Orobotting. Man, I don't have a lot of reasons to get pumped about a lot, but I tell you what, I've never played a game outside of PoE where every 3 months I am completely psyched for what's going to be announced. It's just fucking amazing. Come on, let me back in. I got 40 minutes of testing to do. Man, Blazing Salvo was so fucking tanky when I played that too. Like, it was mad lad levels tanky. But, when they introduced so there was like 3 leagues ago when Archnem was a thing. And like that's funnily enough when I started the Blazing Salvo sort of rush and everything and Cracklands and everything. But, it was so difficult to play the Archdem system, let alone the changes to the game where you were getting constantly off screen, to the point where, like, I've always taken the good with the bad with Path of Exile, but that was a real rough fucking league to get through early on, because you were just getting absolutely bodied by bullshit. But last league was by far one of the best leagues they've put out. Dude, Cracklands was so good. And you know what? I put out those videos because in the previous league, I saw that Cracklands was only played by Guardians, and I couldn't understand why. Jug League. Man, every league's a fucking Jug League. Let's be real. Jug is the best ascendancy. No, I remember seeing like there was no one was playing Cracklands, and then I put out the League Starter guide on Cracklands based on the leadership's price configuration, and bam, that league Cracklands was meta, and I was like, fuck yeah, just call it. But like this league's a difficult one because number one, I don't know what it is yet, but like we'll see. The first curation video I always put out is a list of like safe builds that will work irrespective. But not knowing, like, usually we have a manifesto by now. We haven't had a manifesto, so it's hard to predict what exactly is going to be the changes that we see. That's all good, man. Oh yeah, I just saw it.
Warrior. In Path of Exile, Heist League, Crackling Lance was released. Despite high hopes, it's low damage and jank.
I'll suss that one out after, man, because it looks like a pretty good video actually. But yeah, and initially like Cracklands wasn't a very good skill when it first came out, and then like if you play it the right way, it's actually quite good. Oh god damn it. Right, where's the patch? Update. We'll just download this update. Ooh, what is this? Where are you loading? They just put up content. Ooh. No. Home. What do we got? Was it? Oh, this is such a so they've actually changed the way they've done this. So patch notes announcement 1. They're fucking really milking this. If they change totems for the better, man, and Chain Hook becomes usable on totems, I guarantee everybody in this channel, I will fucking league start Chain Hook totems with Brutus Lead Sprinkler. I will fucking do it. I am waiting to see Chain Hook be usable on totems. The second it's usable, I drop everything and I be the guy putting together fucking Chain Hook totems. I've been sitting here league on league waiting for fucking Chain Hook goddamn totems. Chain Hook totems just seems like the greatest fucking thing ever. Chain Hook totems, Bill. Chain Hook totems. I don't even care if it's a bad league start if I played it. Chain Hook totems is just gonna, yeah, it'd be Chad. Fucking, all I want in life is Chain Hook totems. Chain Hook totems would complete me. Holy shit, that's a 30 gig patch, what the fuck? God damn it. That's an absolutely enormous patch. What the hell did they patch? Yeah, Chain Hook totems is would be a life changer. Thanks for the follow, Bad Man. But I am pumped. I think this league I'm going to play around with a bit more spell suppression sort of stuff for Delve. Like, last league I did RF. I'm not going to play an RF character. This is the thing, we don't know. Like, they've had 4 months, so it's very likely we have PoE 2 content we're going to see. But then they've got ExileCon in July as well. Oh, dude, I've got 100 megabit down, which is pretty slow comparative worldwide, but it's pretty fast. It's a reasonably fast connection, which is why I can sit here and download and upload at the same time. It's a 30 gig Chain Hook patch. They've restructured the whole game around Chain Hook. Bill, our dreams might come true on the Chain Hook front. Pretty pumped for Chain Hook. I'm not gonna lie, I really want to play Chain Hook. Like, Chain Hook totems, not self-cast Chain Hook, because that's shit. Where was it? Man, that'd suck if you didn't have auto-patching set up on your Steam, then a patch would come out and you'd be waiting 20 hours for a bloody update. So, Spectral Helix, by the way, terrible to level now. Like, it's not nerfed to the shithouse. It still works, but it was nerfed last league. See stuff like this, like getting Forbidden Right to work is incredibly difficult. Because you realistically can't get Forbidden Right to function properly without Mage Blood, and then it's still really unreliable in early days unless you have hits can't be evaded to craft on your weapon. And that's just, it's too gated to be able to play. So some of these builds are really difficult to get started in the initial early league launches. Like, Bone Shatter's guaranteed to always work, it's a really good skill. I see, like, Bleed SST is not terrible, but I wouldn't recommend, like, it's got a cap to the level of ability that how far it can go initially. I know there are some creators that are like really pedal Bleed SST. I don't think it's worth it. I think it's a bit of a gimmick build. It's not a fun build. SST is just not very fun. Shield Crush is fun. SST is not fun. SST is just like shield, bam, out the door. One thing that I noticed really interestingly that I'd probably say to everybody steer clear of is there were at the very start of last league, and I noticed this while I was trawling through the other day looking for builds and whatnot. I noticed a lot of people were playing like Freezing Pulse Totem. Don't touch Freezing Pulse Totem at league start. So anything that you play on Hierophant Totems, right? If you're going to play Hierophant Totems, Ice Spear is what you want to play. And you're gonna be squishy as fuck, so you're just gonna get absolutely faced every time you go and fight something. Like, you just can't mitigate the damage with that build. Cremation's really OP, but it does require a bit of investment. How are we going on that download? Nearly there. 29%. Yeah, I'd say, like, anyone who's putting out, like, builds on, like, you should play Shockwave Totems are different. But the other thing is, some people will put out builds and say, oh, Shockwave Totems are really OP, yada yada yada. Yep, the problem with Shockwave Totems is you need Astral Projector, and Astral Projector is a fucking expensive ring at League Start. So I wouldn't anyone who puts up Shockwave Totem builds, don't even look at it, because realistically you won't get access to Astral Projectors maybe until the first week's out, and everybody who plays Shockwave Totem is going to be trying to get those rings, and they're going to price lobby the market up, so that ring's going to cost a shitload in the first like 1-2 weeks, and you're going to have a bad League Start. Because the problem with Shockwave Totem is if you cast a totem next to an enemy, the enemy will kill the totem before the totem can do enough damage off the Shockwave. So there's no point playing it without Astral Projector. Yeah, I'd like... This just looks like a terrible build. Like, Stormburst Totems, there's no damage there. Wouldn't recommend playing Annihilating Light on a Totems build at like 3 days in. Seems like a really stupid decision to make. But, you know, how far did this go? Yeah, it went to 3 days and then he gave up and deleted the character. So, yeah, you can see from the onset, there are just some builds that don't work on League Start. This is really interesting. I don't know what the hell this is. 9,000. Oh, Mana Bond. Like, this is what I mean. There's some really crazy people that just get this shit working within, like, look at this. Like, within 3 days of last league, right? He had fucking Righteous Providence, Forbidden Flesh, and Forbidden Flame within 3 days. Like, what the fuck is someone doing to be able to do that? You would have to be in a party. Like, there's no way that you could get that without doing a party. Shield Charge build. If you're going to play Shield Charge build, run the Zerka Warcry build. Ancestral Cry. And then basically as you walk around, yeah. And you'll need, oh god, you'll need that axe as well, I'm pretty sure. Or mace. That blinds enemies. I did one of those a little while ago. Start over again. I'm just rolling through builds right now while my patch comes in. But basically what I was saying is, like, there's just some crazy motherfuckers out there like this, like full blown mana bomb build within 3 days. Have a look at the latest snapshot. Burning Arrow Ballista Totems. Not sure, man. Like, Burning Arrow was really good a few leagues ago. The only way that I could see that being good, and the reason why Burning Arrow was good was because of its ignite scaling, and it used to be the way that it worked with the Elementalists. So you used a golem stack, and then the buff off of golems used to be like an additional, like, compounding percentage of damage based on the different golems you're rolling. You had like, what, 4 or 5 golems, and they would auto cast. But they nerfed that out of the game because it was super powerful, because at one point Burning Arrow was just like an unbeatable fucking build, and it just came out of nowhere. But maybe they changed that in the patch notes, and we'll see that when they roll out the patch notes in less than 40 minutes. Hopefully. What's the timer left? What have we got on the timer? 33 minutes. How many people are on the... 25,000 viewers. You know the one thing that's really, like, frustrating each league on league, like, you see, like, how many people tuned in to, like, Diablo and Diablo 4. I'm not sorry to say, like, it's annoying that Diablo gets so much exposure over the top of Path of Exile, because Path of Exile is just such a better game. But I guess it's sort of more appealing to the more hardcore audience. But yeah, it'd be nice to see PoE get a bit more love into the future with PoE 2. So, like, we'll see in the patch notes plush as to whether or not Burning Arrows getting buffed or whatnot. Like, generally, it'll be like a line by line. I'll go through line by line after the patch notes come out this morning. And I'll go, this will work, that's not going to work, this is buffed, this is not buffed, this is nerfed, this is neutral, a neutralized change. Because, yeah, I would assume, like, you know, yeah, there'll be some rescaling there. If anything, they're probably going to attack Ignite, because I'll be honest with you, after playing EK Knives, Ignite EK, it's really fucking powerful, like crazy powerful. Yeah, that's it. Like, I will say, like, part of the reason why I guess we all love PoE is because it's not casual. Yeah, I reckon so too, Beatrice. I reckon it's going to be an absolutely monolithic launch, because an extra month is a lot of time for GGG to get their shit together. But yeah, that's the one thing. Like, if there was a bit more of an entrance to the game that made it a little easier to play, then, you know, I'd say, like, it'd be really cool if the player base could be expanded, if there was just a bit more accessibility. And that's something that they need to look at with PoE 2 at the end of the day. But, like, right now, yeah, just wouldn't touch totems. I saw stuff like this, anomalous siege ballista totems. Like, I've always been interested in, like, siege ballista totems and stuff like that, but this just looks like, for day 3, like, this just looks fucking mental to try and get to work. Did he end up going max spec with this? So he kept it through. Iron Commander. Frenzy, siege ballista. What did he have Frenzy stacked in? Oh, okay. Sniper's Mark. 4.7 mil. But it's got no defense. So, like, you could play it, but you'd play it at your own volition because 0 defense. So expensive to get working too. That was like a 4 divine item or a 10 divine item or something at one point. I don't know why this was so expensive. Emperor's Cunning. Fucking hell, that's an expensive setup. Grasping Mail. So to get to that damage, to get to that damage, this was so freaking expensive. But this could be a potential build. Like, honestly, Iron Commander builds are really cool. How much? So he's dex stacking. In Iron Commander, you get 1 totem per 200 dex. I'm actually going to save that down. I think that's actually a pretty cool build. Yeah, but for us who are sitting up at, like, whatever dumb o'clock, like, going over shit like this, it's just, yeah, it's not enough. Oh god, where are we at with the patch? 8 minutes remaining until I can get back into the game to play it. So there's some like depth-wise spinning down the mod. That's got to be, yeah, that's got to be Manabon. And I'll tell you what's even more tilting. So as I was leveling up my EK Knives, I had a fucking Voidborn Reliquary key drop in like Act friggin' 8. I was like, you gotta be shitting me. I sold for like 4 div. I was like, you gotta be shitting me. Like, the few days or the week before the league launches and I have a goddamn Voidborn key drop. I'm like, fuck my life. I don't think that it's going to appeal to the casual market. I just don't see PoE going down that path. I think they're always going to be a company that's going to focus on the hardcore market that's been playing the game for the longest amount of time. And like, definitely they went the opposite way and they were trying to make it more hardcore, but I think they realized that was a bad idea. I think there's a jug version of Flicker Strike. No, it's in stack mode. Yeah, I think there's a jug version of it, dude. But I know what you mean. Pretty unreliable build. I wouldn't recommend Flicker Strike unless you're that mage fist dude. Then he's got those builds down pat. I'm the Delve guy. So what do we have here? I wouldn't recommend Winter on League Start, void of that creator that we don't talk about that put out that build. I wouldn't recommend that build at League Start. Dude, Jug can do everything. It can outlast anything and everything. It's the greatest ascendancy ever made. 2 minutes until we finish patch. Are we looking 27 minutes? Damn, 32,000 people watching the thing on stream. Very likely they're going to nerf something to do with the Jug. Potentially they're going to nerf the Unstoppable Ascendancy. I think it's Unstoppable or Unbreakable. Not Unstoppable, it would be Unbreakable. I would anticipate a nerf coming to this, because this is what makes the Jug so fucking powerful and so tanky. And basically a no-brainer choice for playing anything and everything. So I sort of have a gut feel that they're going to touch that. But I don't know. The other thing, like they nerfed Inquisitor last league, but Inquisitor's still strong. But there are other ascendancies that aren't really used. Like if we look at, for example, the heat mapping here, right, of ascendancies that are not used. I would suspect that like Gladiator is unused, right? If they are going to fucking buff melee, make Gladiator good again. Like, if there was anything they could do, make it good again. And I suspect there's going to be some big ascendancy shakeups in this, because it's the start, the first league of a new year, basically. So I would suspect that, like, potentially these sort of, like, Assassin is going to get a buff up, because, you know, Trickster got a buff. I'd say Chieftain is going to get propped up, because Chieftain's actually really good. Gladiator, hopefully that gets a buff up. Like, when we make these more melee-centric sort of ascendancies sort of chat again, that'd be really good to see. Because, like, by the end of the league, if we have a look at what was popular, like, it tends to just be the same old builds, like Occultist. Deadeye's obviously popular because of what, Lightning Arrow and whatever. Yeah, Tornado Shot. Interesting that there's fireballs setups there. But, like, even Guardian, like, as a sort of minion master skill, Guardian is actually, I would say, better than the Necromancer, but still not played as much as the Necromancer, because the Necromancer has a lot more flat damage. They're probably not going to change the Ascendancy at all. They're more or less, if I was them, right, I would just change this to 6% from 8%. And, like, that's enough of a damage, that's enough to reduce the damage reduction to a point where it's still good, but not, like, God tier, like what it is right now. And, like, then you just have to add more armor, basically. Get more armor in your build. And, like, to be honest with you, it's still going to be an OP build to use this. Like, it's just a broken-ass friggin' ascendancy point. Pardon me. Occultist. See that, well, last league they nerfed the Occultist, dude. So they took away, they changed the Ascendancy configuration. So Occultist was, you used to get, like, I can't remember what it was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they took your hexes can affect hexproof enemies. There was some, I can't remember the change they did last league. I know they did nerf the Occultist though. So I don't think they're going to touch Occultist. I think the reason why Occultist is still popular is because of shit like Spark and whatnot. And it's just the explodey. It's having that Chaos Explosion is the real sell point there. Come on, finish updating. Anything else being updated on the website? They keep updating this post. I like this feature too. It used to piss me off having to, like, hit Alt, even though it sounds like a lazy man's sort of response, but I don't like having to do extra movements. How am I not playing yet, man? I gotta wait for the patch. There we go. Ah, yeah, that was it, man. And then it still ended up being super powerful. Oh, 30 gig patch to download. We're at 22 minutes until the announcement. Man, I like running it over Steam because I like keeping track of how many hours I've played the game. I gotta delete some characters too because I'm running out of character space. One button multi-curse, that's it. This build has just been crazy to level up. So there's actually a variation of the build where you can use a two-handed hammer, which is actually what I'm going to feature on the leveling guide that I'm going to put out. But I just think this build is fucking amazing. Like, it's so easy to play. There's no benefit to running it over Steam. It's just I like doing it because I can keep track of my hours, and I actually really like Steam, so I have everything run through Steam. Scooter, man, what the fuck? What do we got here? Piercing light from League of Legends. Just got the timer sitting in the background. That's right, I gotta turn that up. Like, there's nothing special in this build that makes it this powerful. It's just this skill natively levels with EK so friggin' well. Like, to have this much damage just sort of natively going through the campaign on a, like, it's on a Shanky 5 link with pretty bad leveling uniques. It's pretty damn good. So, like, mapping wise, this would be super easy. So, void of everything else, if I can't see anything in the new skills, hopefully that we're getting, then this is going to be the goer, and I'm pretty ready to play this in Delve at this stage. So that's why I was doing a bit of build testing around this, because most leagues I haven't really done like pretty robust build testing. I've sort of just put it together and whatnot off of previous leagues and whatnot, but yeah, I really wanted to do something different this league. But the fact that you can level this up through 10x with Life Spring just indicates that this is a ridiculous build. Just Ignite scales so well, and then if you get a Gloomfang, you're set. Which I think I had one drop, like as I was playing through the campaign last league on League launch. I sold one for a fair bit. Go up here and start stacking Spell Suppression. And then you use Spell Suppression to proc Elemental Overload, because you scale up your Spell Suppression to allow for crits, and Bob's your uncle. And I'm even using like shitty gear that you'd never use, like was it the shield that I'm running once I get into this. So like Cult and Halt, like you never use that, but it's actually quite useful on this build as a leveling item. Yeah, we're not selling anything unless it's material at this stage. Never played EK Ignite. I know MBX played a build similar to this last league. Yeah, dude, I've got drops enabled. Always got to have them drops enabled. We're at 18 minutes before announcement. I've actually never sat up and ran a live stream in all the leagues on a league announcement, because I've never had a day off on league announcement. Hey, one skin. Hey, free falling. Does it? I didn't think it looked better. I actually really... I liked this playstyle so much more than what I saw and played in D4. I'm glad I sort of got the D4 stuff out of my system because I'm like, this game is so much better. Like, I actually have fun doing this and leveling up. I never thought I'd be like, hey, I don't mind leveling up. But this build actually makes it quite easy to level up as well. Kill it! I'm interested to see how Ignites afflict Crystal King as well, because every build I play is basically a build that needs to be able to kill the king. Because my entire farming strategy in early league is all about farming Delve to like 350 and then just smashing Crystal Kings all day long. Balls uprisings. Yeah, it looks pretty, but functionality-wise, it's not as functional. I just didn't think, D4 was very, like... Yeah, I just don't think it's mechanically as robust as PoE in any way, shape, or form. This is so good. Like this feeling of being excited about PoE again. Yeah, I always feel like I have a blank sort of like, it's like a void waiting for the next league. I can't answer that question, man. It entirely depends on how my RNG plays out in finding him. Chaos EK on a cultist. Like, it's not an impossible question, that one, Bill. It's doable. Potentially, like, you could run, like, replica Alberons and strength stack, and then convert that to cold, and then convert that to chaos. Because Spark Occultist, everybody plays Spark Occultist. Bugger that. It's too easy mode. Oh yeah, man, you just gotta, so all you do is you just keep pushing horizontally. So funnily enough, I got a Delve guide from League Start set to come out in hopefully maybe even later tonight. So I can't do much I can never do much until patch notes, because the combination of people who go up in arms in community, as well as other creators who start throwing shit at anyone who releases anything before the patch notes come out. So yeah, I'll have a once I know what the changes are to Delve, then I'll have a look at that and I'll put out a new guide tonight or tomorrow. Yeah, I've never been a fan of Spark, eh? Like, I know it's a really good skill, but I just I've never been overtly interested in Spark. It's just never caught my fancy. So we got 13 minutes until announcement. Yeah, I don't know why. Spark is just not something that I've ever been excited about playing. Like, and you know, it was ever since the Aura stack has started and things like that, like, you know, everybody's always been on Spark. And I know that you can cheese the game, but again, it's just not really, like, interesting to play. I've always, and like, the ethos on the channel is to really challenge, like, new skills that come out and or heavily tanky builds that are sustainable and or easy entry for newer players and things like that. I just don't find Spark to be a challenging enough skill to invest in, because I like playing things that are non-meta or as minimal meta as possible generally. Not a big fan of playing what everybody else is playing. It's like never really played Lightning Strike Raider as an active skill in League because I've never found it to be an interesting enough build to spend the time investing in. And like, I know, like, oh yeah, before the nerfs to the number of projectiles, like, okay, it's a really good build. And I'd recommend it, but I wouldn't play it myself. Yeah, man, if you're gonna watch any delve guide I've done, the one from last league is the one worth watching. Man, RF is just one of those really good builds that you just can't deny. Like, I love playing RF. Especially like if you get stuck and your build doesn't work, RF is a good go-to build. Especially when you get 6,000 HP regen per second and you become almost unkillable. Hopefully we get some buffs. Like what I was saying before is like, hopefully they buff Gladiator, because I would like to play a Gladiator build. Like, I really like the 1-2 slam builds that you could play a few leagues ago. Like, I thought that was great. Like, or the ground slam shattering steel build that you're able to play a few leagues ago with the champion. I remember just absolutely smashing the game on that. I need to get an obliteration. 11 minutes. Just absolutely murder this guy. But yeah, need chaos rays. And lightning rays. Yeah, man. Well, it's forgiving, isn't it? Like, you don't have to worry about absolutely getting destroyed, and you can play the game and learn the game. You're not worried about dying every 2 seconds, and yeah. And that's what I like about tanky builds or high damage mitigation builds. It's just a lot more enjoyable to play. Yeah, anything else useful here? This here, arguably. Hey Curls, ready for the league announcement? It's 9 minutes until we get an announcement. I know, right? It's exciting. It's friggin' exciting. I'm legit pumped. So I know anything they announce is league mechanic wise, I will still be in the depths of delving like a madman to kill Crystal Kings. That's where my headspace is.
Hey, calm down if you're scared. You ain't calm, I don't care. You can run around, get your gunner down, we blow it up in the air. Bombs right
so
there.
I had this
On top of all these stairs. Y'all down below, y'all sounding low. Keep looking up and just stare this ain't no.
We got 9 minutes. People posting toucan. Fucking toucan reference. Nah, I even took the day off just for this league announcement today, so I said to my guys yesterday, I'm on leave tomorrow, don't annoy me, I will not be taking any phone calls. I haven't been streaming all week, so I haven't, well, I was streaming earlier in the week, so I haven't really been online to see who's about. Yeah, I got today off, so I'll be putting out a heap of videos today. I've got a full plan for a whole heap of stuff. Ellis will be on probably, like I'll be live streaming tonight and whatnot, doing build testing and whatnot, so he'll probably be on tonight. Yeah. God, this build is good to level. 7 minutes. Whew. No, it'd be good to get back into Delve, play some new builds, hopefully get some. I'm really hoping we get some awesome skills because we haven't really had. Like last league, we had VF and that ice skill that came out, but it wasn't very good. That ice skill, to be honest with you, it was trash. So I'm hoping for some absolutely face-meltingly awesome skills that we're going to get that we can build, that we can hopefully break the game in again. I really want to play something that's just like off the chain stupid. No 1-2 punch skills either. I just don't want to play 1-2 punch skills. I think they're lame. And that's not my playstyle, but like, was it Lightning Conduit? I wasn't a big fan of Lightning Conduit. I know everyone else was, but I wasn't. Fair enough, man. I'll have it up on screen in full screen glory. Probably pull my head out of the center of the view panel anyway. I like to challenge myself. Basically, so that the idea behind using new skills, right? You can use new skills, right? As long as you... So I always preface those videos, like with VF Totems last league, right? I preface that, okay, it may or may not be a good skill. That's it, Chainhook Totems. If it gets announced Chainhook now works on Totems, I'm in. Melee attack Totems would be great, because that'll enable Chainhook. But the idea behind building new skills is not to try and come up with a whole new approach to building a skill. It's to go and have a look at skills that work, because the build ethos that GGG uses is they do build new skills with new mechanics, right? But the skills have like a baseline that they relate back to pre-existing skills because they have to mechanically, right? So you just need to find a skill that's similar, and that generally tends to be, you know, the tree that will work with a certain, you know, with the new skill that's being announced. That's at least the way that I see it. And then you can sort of theory craft around that. Yeah, that's exactly my mindset on Necron 2. Like that ice skill that came out last league, I don't even remember its name, number one. Number two, like it had a cooldown on it. Like to this day, like was a Vigilant Strike and stuff like that. Nobody plays that because nobody's going to play a skill that requires excessive cooldown to cast constantly. And like having it as a secondary skill is a bit of a dumb design, and also dumb on their part to basically go and assume that people would have a secondary attack skill, because most people don't do that. Like you run one skill and you have an absolute juiced endpoint. The way you balance your character is based on one skill. So designing skills as secondary counterpart skills, unless it's like a complement to the first skill, is just not, is counterintuitive. 3 minutes until the stream starts with GGG. Yeah, Frost Legion. Yeah, that was just bad design, that skill. Like, I don't even know why they put that in the game, because it's not functional. Like, you can't play it cast on crit. You could probably scale it really well, but I don't know if their plan was to have like a nuke damage scenario, but it's not a good skill, and I don't think anyone even played it last league. So thanks for the follow, Atlanta, or Altana, sorry. Yeah, Frost Legion just seems like it was poor design choice at the end of the day. Alright. Alright. Let me know if the audio is bad there. Thanks for the follow, Necron. I don't know if he tried Frost Legion. I never really follow. I'll be honest with you, I never follow what Mathil does. He only gets it to like level 90 something in SSF or hardcore or whatever he plays. I don't really, like, he gets the build working, but it's not like practical at the end of the day. So exciting. 1 minute and 30 seconds. Is my mic muted? No, it's not muted. I can hear it. Delve buff. I know, right? Delve buff. Anything we get, delve buff. Thanks, guys. Okay. Hopefully we get like a new mechanic similar to Delve. Awesome. Yeah, that's what I thought. Fluffy, shut up. Getting updates left, right, and center. So have they updated the website? With the they never released the patch notes before the stream's out, so Crucible teasers, no, they haven't updated that yet. I don't know what the supporter packs will be. They still haven't released the new supporter packs either. No, wait, Core 2023. Oh, those are the core supporter packs. Okay, those are the new ones. I haven't even bought any of those.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. Thanks for joining us for today's live stream as we unveil Path of Exile Crucible, which launches on April 7th on PC and Mac, and on April 12th on console. Twitch drops are enabled on today's live stream, so make sure you follow the instructions below in order to claim your Sphinx wings. Speaking of live streams, this is our last dedicated Path of Exile 1 announcement stream for around 6 months. That's because our 3.22 expansion announcement will occur during the ExileCon livestream in late July. Set yourself a reminder to tune in, because we'll also be unveiling massive amounts of information about Path of Exile 2, including revealing the date that its beta will start. Okay, back to today's livestream. Here's what you can expect. We'll start with a trailer for Crucible, followed by a deep dive on the League itself. Then we'll cover this expansion's endgame improvements, including the introduction of Atlas gateways and revamps to both Breach and Abyss leagues. We'll discuss changes to Path of Exile's balance metagame, including changes to the passive skill tree, its masteries, an overhaul of the Saboteur and Pathfinder Ascendancy classes, 9 powerful new Val skills, and some of the new unique items you can build around. After that, we'll cover improvements to the Ruthless game mode and the League launch boss kill event, before diving into the new Supporter Pack series. The livestream will then conclude with a Q&A session between Ziggy D and me, where we'll answer questions from Twitch chat. After the livestream, we'll drop the full patch notes. Let's get started with the trailer for Path of Exile Crucible.
Damn, that's a lot.
Hail, one of many. Eons ago, my kind walked the molten surface of this world. Now, we seek a champion. You must endure the heat of the Crucible. To forge weapons unlike any Rayclast has ever seen. Take up the power of the Titans and bring obliteration.
Val Firestorm.
In Path of Exile Crucible, you'll learn about an ancient race of titans who once shaped the primordial surface of Rayclust. In this league, you will earn the ability to forge their power onto your weapons. And what form does that power take? In an iconically Path of Exile way, it's the ability to imbue your weapons with their own passive skill trees. These Crucible trees can have quite an impact on your character build. For example, in addition to the regular mods on this bow, its Crucible tree grants additional physical damage, physical to chaos conversion, the Master Fletcher notable passive, improved grace effect, and level 10 lesser multiple projectiles. While this is certainly a decent tree to get, it's not even the maximum depth and could be even more optimized for your build. In order to forge these powerful trees onto your weapons, you'll need to complete Crucible encounters. There's one in each area. Each encounter takes place at a Crucible forge. As you approach the forge, you'll have the choice of which of your equipped weapons you want to focus on. This can include ones on your alternate weapon swap if you want to improve one you're not currently using. After selecting a weapon, you channel it at the Crucible forge to spawn monsters. The longer you channel for, the more dangerous and rewarding the encounter becomes. As you spawn additional monsters, they combine together to create larger and more fearsome foes that grant even more experience for your Crucible passive tree. Being able to ramp up the difficulty of the encounters is a double-edged sword. While it gives you the opportunity to make rapid progress on your Crucible weapon crafting projects, it comes with significant risk to your character. It's easy to accidentally overwhelm yourself and make an encounter that is too dangerous. Channel carefully and adapt to what your character is capable of.
It looks like it,
When
man.
you first find a weapon, it doesn't have a Crucible tree unlocked. Channeling that weapon at Crucible encounters will unlock and reveal its tree, as well as allocating the first skill. You can only allocate one skill at each tree depth, so you'll need to decide which path through the tree is best for your build. As you get deeper into a tree, more and more experience is required to unlock skills. The final depths can take quite an investment and can only be found rarely on endgame items, but also have some of the most powerful properties. For example, this wand has 2 depth 5 skills to choose from. One of them allows all damage from your Freezing Pulse and Eye of Winter skills to poison, and the other allows various brands to be attached to your Summoned Reaper. There are many such modifiers to skills that will enable very interesting build combinations. In addition to all types of weapons, shields can also be empowered with their own Crucible trees. Here's a relatively simple low-level example. It gets a bit crazier as you approach the endgame. Speaking of the endgame, in endgame Crucible encounters, you'll occasionally find igneous geodes, currency items that can be cracked open to reveal a primeval remnant. This is a map-like item that grants access to the Forge of the Titans, the culmination of your Crucible journey. These primeval remnants always generate as rare items. Half of their mods are upsides and half are downsides. The upsides generally increase the rewards of the area or add special crafting options. For example, causing monsters to drop divination cards or magmatic ore, a form of tradable itemized Crucible tree experience. The downsides are quite punitive compared to most endgame maps. Ideally, you want to find a primeval remnant that is really rewarding upsides alongside downsides you can handle. If you don't think you'll survive a visit to the Forge of the Titans, trade the remnant away to someone else and gamble on cracking open another geode. If you survive and manage to reach the end of the area, you'll find the aforementioned Forge, which allows you to merge Crucible trees on 2 items together. The way this process works is that you provide 2 items of the same class. For example, a pair of bows, a pair of shields, or a pair of one-hand axes. One of these items will be melted down and applied to the other, which will keep its regular properties. Their Crucible trees will be merged together in an unpredictable way, taking elements of each one. This is a little reminiscent of how recombinators applied to item mods, taking parts of each Crucible tree and merging them together, as well as randomly upgrading, downgrading, or mutating skills on the resultant tree. While this process can create some really powerful trees if you get skills you wanted from both items, it can also completely wreck your precious trees, so take care choosing which you risk combining.
absolutely fucking OP.
Also, like Recombinators, there are ways to manipulate the system to improve your odds at getting certain outcomes. For example, any skills that have been allocated are more likely to show up in the resultant Crucible tree. By default, you can only add Crucible trees to non-unique items, but it's possible to get a mod on the Forge of the Titans map that allows you to imbue a unique item with a Crucible tree, which can then be leveled up via regular Crucible encounters.
Mirror level
To
item.
combine Crucible trees on unique
What?
items together, you'll want to find a crystalline geode and crack it open to reveal the secret higher level version of the Forge of the Titans. I probably shouldn't say too much about it, but it will let you do some interesting things with Crucible trees. There's an important thing to note about Crucible trees on unique weapons. In addition to being much harder to unlock, there's a special rule about how they can be combined. A unique weapon must be combined with another copy of the same unique weapon to merge their trees together. Because this destroys one copy, getting a good Crucible tree on a unique weapon makes it insanely valuable. It may also raise the trade value of all unique weapons by quite a lot, as players sacrifice them trying to create perfect Crucible trees. Occasionally, you'll find a Crucible passive skill tree with a special skill that indicates that the item will sell to vendors for a specific item in addition to its regular sale price. These vendor skills usually occur relatively deeply in the tree, so take some effort to allocate, but usually don't block skill choices you'd make when leveling the item up for use. The presence of these skills presents you with an interesting choice about whether you want to use the item or sell it to a vendor, and whether you want to spend your Crucible experience either revealing new trees to hunt for good skills, leveling up items to use, or leveling up items to sell. Crucible also features its own unique items you can earn. For example, El Abin's Visage, a unique helmet, is special in that it's the only armor piece other than shields that can receive Crucible passive skill trees. Wearing it allows you to double down on certain properties that are only available through these trees. There are several other unique items exclusive to Crucible for you to discover in this league. Crucible is a dual combat crafting league with a focus on encounter difficulty scaling and deep weapon customization with a power level that we have never seen before. Without a doubt, some of Path of Exile's most powerful weapons will be forged in Crucible. We can't wait to see what you manage to create. Like all recent Path of Exile expansions, Crucible includes a lot of changes with the goal of improving Path of Exile's endgame. One area we wanted to address was mobility on the Atlas passive tree. Often, you'll find yourself in a situation where you want to specialize in leagues that are on entirely different sides of the Atlas tree, or maybe you want to focus on the type of altar that isn't near the leagues you have picked. To solve this, Path of Exile Crucible introduces Atlas Gateways. These are nodes that you can allocate on the Atlas tree that allow instant travel between two locations.
Oh, what?
There are 3 pairs of gateways, each allowing travel from the left side of the tree to the right side, or vice versa. Each end of the gateway consumes 1 Atlas skill point to allocate, but will potentially save you large amounts of travel points.
That's really freaking good.
In this expansion, we're targeting a couple of endgame leagues that have fallen behind other leagues on the Atlas tree. Let's start with Breach. In the live version of Path of Exile, there are 5 tiers of Breachstone. In Path of Exile Crucible, we're raising the area levels of Breachstones to a much higher baseline level.
That's good.
81 for elemental ones, 82 for physical, and 83 for chaos. Now that the regular Breachstones are much higher level, we have retired charged, enriched, and pure Breachstones. They will be converted to regular ones.
That's a
We
good
have also
choice.
changed how flawless Breachstones are acquired. Previously, you could only get them from Maven invitations, but we prefer access to the hardest Breach content to actually come from playing Breach. Now there are 2 ways to get flawless Breachstones, through Blessings, which are now rarer as a result, and through a skill on the Atlas tree. We've also improved the pacing of Breach encounters. Previously, Breaches felt pretty good early on, but quickly tapered off in density to the point where you wanted to abandon the Breach because it just felt like not enough monsters were spawning. Our changes now keep Breaches feeling dense throughout, leaning more on the side of it feeling overwhelming towards the end of the Breach. We have also reduced the duration of Breaches so there is constant monster pressure and you can get on with your mapping sooner. There are a whole bunch of other Breach changes that you can read about in the patch notes, such as changes to the Betrayal Research Safehouse, Breach Scarabs, Breach Stones from Kirik missions, the Breach Harvest crafting option, the Fragment Stash tab, Divination cards, Breach unique items, Atlas passives, and so on.
So it's actually playable again.
We're also revamping Abyss in a similar way. Abyssal Depths now always contain an Abyssal Lich.
Oh,
Previously,
hell yeah.
the prevailing gameplay was to check the loading screen art of an Abyssal Depths to see if it contained a Lich, and bail out if it didn't. Now, the Depths always contain a Lich, removing the need for this step. While the rate of encountering Abyssal Liches is unchanged, Abyssal Depths are rarer than before.
However, Abysses now have a chance to spawn a Stygian Spire in place of their reward chest, which will drop all of the jewels and other items you'd normally receive, as well as a Stygian Vice. In addition, you're guaranteed to always get a 4-hole Abyss alongside your Abyssal Depths. Previously, Abyssal Depths could only spawn immediately after a single Abyssal hole, which prevented you from getting full value from the Abyss. The Lightless Legion notable passive has been replaced with a new skill which grants Stygian Spires in your maps drop items with +1 to item level. This is intended to allow players to continue to be able to obtain item level 86 Stygian Vices and other base types as a reward for specializing in Abyss. The small passives leading up to this notable passive have also been replaced. We've done a balanced pass on Abyssal Lich encounters to make them more appropriately difficult relative to the current standard of endgame encounters. Abyss uniques have had some balanced attention also, and the details are in the patch notes.
Manamu's guys.
Overall, these changes ensure you can play a wider variety of leagues in the endgame, both through being able to access them more easily and because Breach and Abyss now feel far more modern and competitive with other popular league content. A big goal of the Crucible expansion is to provide a lot of new ways to build characters, and to breathe new life into older builds.
To achieve this, we're doing two things. Firstly, we have created many more interesting options for one of Path of Exile's core build systems, the passive skill tree, by overhauling many of its masteries. Secondly, we have revamped 2 specific Ascendancy classes. As we reviewed the masteries on Path of Exile's passive skill tree, we realized that a lot of the choices were rather bland and could be a lot more exciting. We went through the masteries one by one and tried to come up with as many interesting stats as we could, ignoring what was currently there.
Once we had a short list of high quality stats, we added in the existing ones that used to be on each mastery and picked the 6 best. All of the leftover ones have been saved for later or used in places like unique items. This process was performed on approximately half of the masteries on the tree, initially targeting the ones that needed the attention the most. Previously, some masteries only had 4 options, so we've tried to increase as many as possible to 6 options. We've also added a couple of new mastery types that we felt were missing. Let's look at an example, the life mastery choices. You can see some of the interesting new options, such as the ability to manipulate your low life and full life thresholds,
cool.
which allows you to more effectively use the damage while on full life support gem and many unique items.
Oh shit.
Getting a large increase to maximum life when you have no life on your body armor not only works really well with a whole lot of unique items, but also opens up new prefix composition options for rare body armors. Here you can see the armor and energy shield mastery has more options available than before. The other thing we focused on with this one is tying the mechanics together better. Instead of some being about armor and some being about energy shield, we've tried to make sure each really emphasizes having both armor and energy shield. On the Leech Mastery, we've combined the 3 increased life mana and energy shield recovery stats into one choice that affects all of them. The space we've freed up has been used to add some powerful new options, such as a portion of your Leech applying instantly. The Spell Suppression Mastery also has many interesting options. Your chance to suppress spell damage becoming lucky is extremely useful before you've optimized your gear and haven't reached 100% yet. The third option rewards you for stacking more than 100% spell suppression, which previously had few benefits. Now it's something you can plan your itemization around. While looking at masteries, we noted that there were some mechanics that didn't have enough passive tree support, so we decided to add some more options and passive skill choices for those mechanics. We also wanted to grant more access to certain types of masteries in specific parts of the passive skill tree. For example, in order to allow more access to the attack mastery, we've added an attack cluster by the Templar and one between the Ranger and Shadow. We wanted to create more access to other forms of recovery such as regen and recoup, so we've added some new passive skill clusters. Note that there is now a new mastery called Recovery. We've also added more capacity for investment in certain mechanics that we felt could be improved, such as link skills, stun mitigation, and marks. These mastery improvements and passive tree changes are just some of the ones introduced in Path of Exile Crucible. We look forward to your feedback on the rest when you check out the passive skill tree next week.
This is fucking insane.
While going through Ascendancy classes, we identified 2 that needed work.
I love it.
The Saboteur and the Pathfinder. Both have been significantly changed in Path of Exile Crucible. These changes reinforce their respective identities while adding some new options to build around. The Saboteur is definitely the Ascendancy class most aligned with traps and mines, but the old version of the Saboteur made it difficult to play anything but traps or mines. The new version has more builds available, including a whole new specialization, triggers. There are 2 notable passives that help with this. Like Clockwork grants you the increased cooldown recovery rate stat, which is a pretty rare one.
I know, right?
This is great for triggered spells as it indirectly increases their damage. This notable also makes your enemies have longer cooldowns, which can be useful in certain boss fights, for example, causing the Maven's memory game to occur less often. The Perfect Crime notable passive summons 2 trigger bots, which override the location of where a triggered spell is being cast, and instead causes it to trigger twice, once from each of their locations.
Cast on crit
The
iced
layout of the
over.
Saboteur's Trap and Mine ascendancy passives has changed, so that there aren't separate 4-pointers for traps and mines. Now each one has a 2-pointer that is connected to the same shared 4-pointer. We have also completely reworked Bomb Specialist to be specifically tied to area damage, so it's a slightly more general skill. It both gives you some area damage as well as some defense against incoming area damage against you. The Pathfinder has been overdue for some attention, especially with recent features such as concoction skills that she could get the ability to specialize in. We also wanted the Flask-themed Ascendancy to have a proactive way of improving Life Flask usage. Master Distiller allows you to turn most of your skills into concoction-like effects. Master Surgeon now effectively gives all of your Life Flasks the Enduring effect, previously only found on Mana Flasks. Finally, both of the major Flask-themed branches now have some form of Flask Charge recovery. There are other improvements to the Pathfinder Ascendancy, such as Nature's Reprisal, now interacting with Wither to improve all forms of your Chaos damage, rather than just attack forms of it. Check out the full details in the patch notes that we'll be posting after the livestream.
Sabo is an insane cast and crit too.
Path of Exile Crucible introduces 9 new Val skills. Last expansion, there was an emphasis on melee Val skills. In Crucible, we're making sure that many other types of builds get new skills to build around. Val skills let us introduce quite powerful effects that we couldn't normally give to a regular skill that can be used constantly. They also implicitly act as a buff to the underlying skill. Val Absolution upgrades one of your Sentinels of Absolution into an Apparition of Innocence.
Oh, fuck off.
You can only have one apparition at once, but just check out these massive AoE skills it uses.
Oh my god. It's actually really
Val
good.
Arctic Armor instantly encases you in ice, preventing non-instant actions including movement, but granting massive damage reduction against hits. After a short duration, it also starts to regenerate your energy shield and mana at a fast rate.
Oh, that's
Both
really
the damage
good.
reduction and regeneration last for a few seconds, or until you have been hit 3 times. It cannot be manually cancelled. Because the skill is instant, it's a great emergency button against dangerous boss slams. It also makes you count as being frozen, despite Arctic Armor normally making you freeze immune. Having another way to self-freeze may be of interest to a few mad scientist build creators in the community.
Jug. Unstoppable.
Val Lightning Arrow fires a barrage of piercing projectiles that cause lightning to strike nearby targets whenever they hit an enemy. After a short amount of time, or when they collide with terrain, the arrows randomly change direction and continue flying. This occurs a number of times before the arrows expire. Each arrow can hit the same target once per redirect. Because the arrows travel for a set time before redirecting, rather than a set distance, projectile speed modifiers affect the distance traveled. High projectile speed lets you clear out huge areas with them, while reducing your projectile speed increases the chance of them hitting the same target multiple times. With very low projectile speed, the skill can hit a single target 20 plus times.
What?
Val Reap conjures a ring of scythes that deal damage to all enemies in a circular area. The scythes leave behind a pool of blood that deals heavy physical damage over time to enemies standing in it, and for a short duration after they leave it. Val Reap instantly grants a large number of the blood charges used by normal Reap on use, as well as temporarily higher maximum blood charge capacity, substantially powering up the regular version of the skill. Path of Exile Crucible introduces 5 other Val skills we'll reveal over the next week.
Dominating
Val Animate
Blow.
Weapon, Val Domination, Val Ice Shot, Val Rejuvenation Totem, and Val Firestorm. This expansion also introduces more than 10 new unique items. There are 3 in particular I'd like to show you today. Blood Price is a unique helmet that has a new effect, reserving enemy maximum life. This does exactly what it implies, causing nearby enemies to start at 92% maximum life. While this increases your clear speed against all enemies, it's especially useful against bosses.
Yeah.
The helmet's drawback is that it reduces your maximum life, but provides decent life regeneration and block and stun recovery to counteract this. Tainted Pact is an amulet that causes chaos damage over time to heal you while you're leeching life. While the amulet provides a decent amount of life leech itself, it'll certainly require a few tricks to unlock its full potential.
I reckon.
Widow Hail is a unique bow that is different from any other bow in Path of Exile. As a weapon, it does basically no base damage and doesn't grant any stats of its own, but it does dramatically increase the power of mods provided by your quiver.
Seems like it's
Needless to say, this could produce some pretty ridiculous outcomes with good rare or unique quivers. We'll reveal some of the other new uniques over the coming week. Ruthless is a game mode that we released alongside the Sanctum
Nobody cares
expansion
about
late last year.
Ruthless.
It's designed around extreme item scarcity and is challenging because you're constantly behind the item power curve. So far, it has found a very passionate audience of players who love how rewarding item drops feel in such an austere environment. We have some small improvements to Ruthless and Path of Exile Crucible. Firstly, Eternal Orbs are back in Ruthless. These are an extremely powerful currency item that allows you to imprint an item and restore it if you're unhappy with the result of crafting. We disabled these game-wide 7 years ago because they were far too powerful when combined with all of the different crafting options Path of Exile offered at the time. Ruthless does not have the base game's crafting feature set, so we have enabled Eternal Orbs to drop in Ruthless, albeit extremely rarely. Ruthless now has its own set of challenges to complete. Like the ones in early Path of Exile, there are a total of 8, and they're very difficult. Like we've done in the past, we're hosting a boss kill event at the start of the Crucible Challenge League. It'll be held in Ruthless Hardcore Solo Self-Found, and will require you to kill both the Uber Searing Exarch and the Uber Eater of Worlds, making it by far the hardest event we have ever run. The first place winner will get to work with our design team.
That's what I'm doing today, Mason. I got like 4 or 5 videos
Ultra
played.
VIP ticket to ExileCon in July. If they aren't able to attend or already have a ticket, then they are allowed to sell this one as they see fit. Second and third place finishers will receive a transferable VIP ticket to ExileCon that can also be sold at their discretion. If you'd like to enter the event, just create a character in Ruthless Hardcore Solo Self-Found on launch day. Best of luck to everyone. On the weekend of July 29 to 30 New Zealand time, which is July 28 to 29 for much of the rest of the world, we're going to be hosting ExileCon 2023 in Auckland, New Zealand. While tickets to the in-person event are very hard to get, we'll be streaming the entire event for free. At ExileCon, we'll reveal our latest updates on Path of Exile 2, Path of Exile Mobile, and the next Path of Exile 1 expansion. Make a note in your calendar, tell your friends, and don't miss it. The second day of the Path of Exile livestream culminates in a competitive race event between some of Path of Exile's best players. In order to select the 4 competitors, we're going to run qualifier events during the months of April and May. The winner of each event will receive a VIP ExileCon ticket, return flights to Auckland and accommodation, and will compete in the race event live on stage. All 4 qualifiers in the final event will be run on the 3.21 version of Path of Exile, which has received a fair amount of early game balance work that will change the racing meta quite a lot.
You'll be able to read more in the patch notes. Once 3.21 releases next week, you'll be able to solve the new meta, practice hard, compete in the qualifier events, and hopefully win your place on stage in July.
Alongside Path of Exile Crucible, we're introducing a few new types of microtransactions. An example I wanted to describe today is that of mannequins. These are hideout decorations that you can place to show off sets of microtransactions you have assembled. You can equip them with your spare micros and pose them in various ways.
It actually was pretty good.
It's also possible to swap your entire outfit with a mannequins one, which lets you easily store micro sets to be retrieved later.
Yeah, I'm not going to buy mannequins. That's a waste of money.
Other new microtransactions coming up include wrapping paper, which lets you gift wrap items to hand to other players, or even drop in town for random people to pick up.
Also not going to do that.
Today we're launching 2 new series of supporter packs, the Lithomancer and Enchanter packs. Each tier contains the pack's full face value and points, alongside several exclusive microtransactions. These packs are only available for the duration of the Crucible League, and will leave the store forever when it ends. As always, the microtransactions in these packs are purely cosmetic and do not affect your character's power or progression in any way. The Lithomancer series of supporter packs contains 6 exclusive microtransactions. The Tunnel Bear isn't just adorable, he will also take the place of the Crawler in Delve.
Oh, yep,
lighting
alright,
your
I'm gonna buy
surroundings
it.
and laying down cables.
Lithomancer it is, boys!
Apparently, this is what happens when your bear gets into a kilo of sulfite. Might explain what happened to Nico. The Ring of the Demon Slayer attempts to exorcise rare and unique demons when you hit them. The souls of defeated demons are banished to the depths below.
That's really cool.
The ancient stone of the Lithomancer's armor set crumbles when you take damage, revealing the crimson core inside. The stone reforms if you haven't taken damage recently.
That's
A
awesome.
sip from the ancestral granite flask causes a Kurui ancestor to appear and surround you in protective wards. The ancestral portal encases you in molten armor when you travel through it.
Kalamoana, warrior.
The summoned Kurui ancestor rallies you to battle and honestly seems to have an unhealthy obsession with combat.
Go forth and conquer.
Ever want to practice running away from volatiles? The gunpowder foot attachment straps explosives to your legs, dispersing lit gunpowder behind you. Be careful, you can only outrun it for so long before it catches up. The Enchanter Pack series also has 6 exclusive microtransactions. The Parrot of Exile pet parrots your exile. We'll just let it speak for itself.
It would be wrong to do that here.
Wrong.
I need more mana.
Drinking from the bottled Storm Jade Flask encases you in a surging tornado, churning up the ground in your wake. If you stand perfectly still while wearing the enchanted armor set, it will attract butterflies to flutter around you. Be careful not to disturb them. Sick of high-fiving giant purple appendages? The Ritualist's Breach Ring visually transforms breaches you find into occult summoning circles. The Enchanter's Crafting Bench replaces the normal crafting bench in your hideout with a suite of tools fit for a master artisan. The various crafting stations burst into life as you use them.
This just doesn't look as good as Lithomancer.
If you've
hands
ever
down.
wanted to remind your character who's really in charge, the Puppeteer's back attachment has you covered. It truly
That's
is
cool.
the sinister presence pulling the strings. These new packs are available right now at pathofexile.com/purchase. Purchases like these directly fund the ongoing development of Path of Exile 1 and 2.
I'm out of pocket
Meanwhile,
$120.
the Forge and Gemling packs leave the store forever at the launch of the Crucible,
I reckon.
so now's your last chance to purchase them.
Make it
Thank you
rain.
for your continued support. We're about to start the
Lithomancer.
Q&A with Ziggy D. After that, we'll post the full patch notes for Path of Exile Crucible. As we approach release next week, our community team will post Crucible's challenges, information on how to update your item filters, more skill gem details, and information on how to prepare for Crucible's launch. On release weekend, we expect to launch the new Mystery Box and this season's Kerrick's Vault Pass, which can be purchased with points and has a new free track available. Thanks for joining the stream today and checking out Path of Exile Crucible. We can't wait to forge some powerful weapons with you next week. The Q&A will start shortly, so please get your questions ready.
No joke, they just released the Lithomancer. I'm buying it right now. Alright, so I'm completely pumped with this. This is actually going to be a fucking amazing league. Damn you, GGG, you bastards. Oh my god. Alright, I just spent $134 and thanks a lot, Grinding Gears, you bastards. Fucking hell. Man, this game, every league just comes up with shit and it's just like... So, based on what we can see there, like, Sabo is going to be absolutely insane for cast win damage, cast on crit, and with those little like the Sentinel bots or trigger bots, that's just going to be absolutely mad. Man, I just like the Lithomancer, the armor looks sick, like it looks tanky. So realistically, Blazing Salvo makes sense. This crafting system is insane, by the way, and we'll find out more as we go through this. But this crafting system is fucking mental. So it means basically you could have multi-skill buffs on individual items, i.e. your shield and your wand. So no unique item usage. It doesn't make sense to use uniques unless you can actually get the skill tree on the item. I can just see this being absolutely ridiculous with like creating like spellcaster wands for things like Blazing Salvo and Crack Lance. Even ignition wands and or maces and or quivers and bows for like ignite. But we'll have to have a look in the patch notes to find out what skills have actually been nerfed. Yeah. The other thing too is like Breach and Abyss were pretty bad. Abyss actually looks like it's pretty farmable, but I would suspect that they've nerfed Amanamu's Gaze. Dude, shield buff's gonna be fucking mental. And like, obviously playing like heavy tank characters for Delve and shit. By the way, I love bear themed stuff. So that Lithomancer skin pack with the Delve crawler being a big ass fucking bear, that's all you guys are gonna see in the streams from now on. But yeah, shield buffs, that's going to be insane for defensive characters. Like, I could see if you play RF, you're going to have a really good time in the league. So I'm thinking Ignite Elementalist is still going to be the go. I don't see the point in playing Val skills, because Val skills, quite frankly, are not that good. Though, unless you put in a lot of investment. What else? Yeah, we'll know I'll know more once I see the patch notes and can work through the patch notes. But I would say that EK Ignite will still be viable unless otherwise there's been a nerf, and I don't suspect there has been. Just having a look to see. So the announcements up. Watch full content reveal. So I've got it on the screen here. So this is what they've just released on the website. So I like this Forge system. I actually think this is going to be I hope this goes core. Like this, you know, I tell you what's insane, right? I'll tell you what's insane. So D4 comes out with their aspect crafting shit for legendaries. This just absolutely shat on what D4 was putting on the table, right? Like, being able to have a full skill tree with skill modifiers on any rare item is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, it's OP as fuck, but on top of that, it's just, like, see you later, D4 revolutionary system. This just shits on that. Yeah, the breach changes seem to be really cool. So, like, this is some of the... Yeah, exactly. That could be a really good... Because you're already going to stack a lot of armor and mitigation. So, that makes that regen, coupled with regeneration rate buffs, plus whatever the skill tree might be, could be absolutely nuts. I already bought the bear. I already bought it. Thanks for the follow, Betsy. So... I saw this too, like frenzy charge generation built into your items, which means you don't need to have it on the skill tree and or specific, see you later, Fluffy. You don't have to have specific modifiers and or gems to be able to generate those charges anymore. But this is what I noticed. So 50% chance to gain Soul Eater on killing blow against her. So you could get fucking headhunter buffs on your items that come out of the skill tree, which is absolutely insane. Look at this. If you were stacking int, right, you could actually stack int by stacking it on the items. Flicker Strike and Vigilance Strike cooldowns can be bypassed by power charges instead of frenzy. Dude, this league's going to be mental for Delve. This is going to be an amazing Delve league. But I saw it's like 30% increased attack speed at the cost of 20% global damage. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Socketed gems by +1 Swift brand. Like, this is one of them. Necromancer. So, you know what? If you were playing minions, this actually sort of fixes minions, because you're able to have a skill tree that's predicated around buffing minions, not only with the mods on the particular item that you're going to be playing anyway. So, you could get huge buffs on minions, and this sort of fixes some of the fuck-ups in the past leagues. Oh, dude, this league looks mad. Like, we look at bows, right? So, 15% explicit speed modifier magnitude. So that looks like flat speed across the board. Grace Aura Effect Reservation Reduction. Fucking hell.
G'day Exiles, Ziggity here. Welcome back. I'm joined here once again by Chris Wilson. How you going this morning, Chris?
Going well, thanks. Thanks for hosting.
That was a pretty spicy, hot reveal stream. The final one before ExileCon, and the last reveal apart from ExileCon's reveal for PoE 1 potentially?
Yeah, well, we'll be having, basically, during the keynote for ExileCon, obviously we'll be dumping all the juicy Path of Exile 2 info, but after that we'll have essentially the Path of Exile 1 322 expansion livestream taking place from the main stage there.
The ending of an era. It's kind of bittersweet. A decade of Path of Exile action at this point, coming to a close, but moving into Path of Exile 2, obviously very exciting. So we won't be probing into that too much here, because that is for ExileCon. So for now, let's talk a bit about Crucible. Has there been any reference to Titans and this very early stage of Rayclestian history before now, or is this kind of new ground that you folks are exploring this time around?
We like to come up with a mixture of taking something that's referenced and then expanding on it. And I don't want to spoil too much of the investigation of where this is referenced in the game, but we recommend looking into the Red Blade Warbands faction. That's a good breadcrumb place to pick up.
The lore experts can begin their investigations there. So the main feature, I think, of Crucible is the power that it's offering players here. How much power is there in Crucible, and are there any drawbacks to that power?
Well, you can definitely view this as pretty strict power creep on weapons. Let's just say that. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there haven't been Path of Exile weapons this powerful before.
Huge power
So
creep.
you're not sacrificing anything by having a weapon tree on the weapon. It's just purely upside.
Hey, Carrie,
but many of the individual skills do come with their own downsides, and you can choose whether to allocate those or not. And so on a weapon by weapon and skill by skill basis, you're definitely going to have to make decisions about what's best for your build.
When it comes to designing like power that has drawbacks versus doesn't have drawbacks, how do you decide which route to go?
We feel that having hard decisions about weapons and build choices and skill use is really interesting. It causes you to have to adjust your build around drawbacks. We don't really want to make a game where you linearly just get the ability to kill monsters more quickly without having to think. We like the idea of finding a choice you can make where you're like, like this will increase my power, but I have to work around something else. Like potentially there's a skill that increases your fire damage, but makes it so that you have slightly lower fire resistance. Not a large drawback to work around, but it pauses you for a second and causes you to think, where can I get that resistance elsewhere?
It's not even.
Now, I want to emphasize, many of the skills here don't have drawbacks. This isn't like, say, Scourge, where there's a corresponding drawback to every single one. It's just the case that for the powerful ones, we've put drawbacks on them so that there's a decision that you have to make. And it's typically the ones near the end of the trees that have the drawbacks, so they don't really block your choices very much early on.
This is just a flat power.
Like
absolute power
big
handed
difference
to us.
compared to Scourge in that regard.
We're going to be dropping
but I've always thought
Ubers all league.
Is good when it's interesting, when it offers you like different decisions and an interesting extra layer of customization.
This is amazing.
Do you
I
have
love
any more
this.
like most ridiculously powerful Crucible trees or nodes that you've seen in testing so far?
All of it.
There are some pretty cool combos. For example, if you found a skill that dramatically increases your cast speed at the cost of lowering your damage, then you may want to use, say, Summon Raging Spirits, because then your increased cast speed means you're casting way more of them, doing a lot more damage, and the decrease to your damage doesn't affect the damage of your Raging Spirits. So in that case, you completely bypass that drawback and get something that's better value. We've also got some quite interesting conditional skills. Ones like, there's one I believe that grants movement speed if your dexterity is lower than 100. And so if you're able to make a build that doesn't have 100 dexterity, like for example, you're just pure intelligence or pure strength, then you can easily take advantage of just a free movement speed boost.
I wonder what the option is for
this is going to be Uber Killer League. Honestly.
Could something like this ever go core in Path of Exile, or is it just too powerful? Like it seems, I look at this and I think, no way is that going core.
It has to go core.
We intentionally do not have any discussions internally about whether something's going core until we've let people actually play the league and get some feedback on that. Because it's premature if we think, yeah, this can go core, and then everyone hates it, or vice versa, then that's an issue. So we throw it out there, see what people think. When we do integrate leagues with the base game, we typically do make changes to make them appropriate for integration. Like, one of the many topics for this coming year is what are we doing about Sanctum, for example, and certainly there's discussion there about how we would make Sanctum appropriate for base game integration if it is going core.
I don't care about
Sanctum.
With
these items having these Crucible trees and everything, you know, maybe the league doesn't go core, but these will go to standard in some capacity. Will they work in standard? How will that work?
They will work in standard, yes. So you can rip them from hardcore to standard right away.
Sanctum
it's going to be good fun.
It's worth noting you can't level them up or allocate nodes any further in standard. Like, you probably want to get the tree allocated correctly before you do ref it to standard. But
this
you
is
can
way
use
too
those
much
skills
power
over
to
there.
take away.
I imagine there's a lot of experimentation as well, because you potentially want to, like, looking at the end game of this is to level up multiple different weapons, selecting the best nodes, and then combining them together until you get like a blend of your perfect ideal nodes. And I imagine that could take a while to get the perfect one.
Certainly, yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff that can happen that we learned from recombinators. So there's quite a big grind to get perfect stuff. And then when you're looking at it on uniques, for example, the grind is even larger. Like, we're really excited to some extent about how the concept of, let's say you want to have a like Starforge or something that's
Oh.
got the best tree on it. How would you actually do that? And
I-
it requires quite a concerted effort from
possibilities
most of
for
the community
builds
of online
just went
players to
through the
achieve
roof.
that, but
Like the
possible.
build diversity out of this.
Now,
will
can you
just go
respec or
to
change
insane
those Crucible
levels.
node allocations?
You're going to build a
if a
whole
skill has
build
been
around an
allocated,
item.
like as in you've chosen the skill, you've got all the experience towards it, you're gaining the benefit from it, and so on, then you can scour it with an orb of scouring. So that will unallocate that last node there.
Dude, shield
And
buffs
then
are
for the ones that you're
fucking
working
OP.
towards that you haven't allocated yet, you can instead retarget the effects, the efforts of the next Crucible encounter you do towards a different node. And I wish I had a graph up so I could demonstrate it. But essentially, if I'm halfway through leveling up to one of the two choices I have at a certain intersection, and I instead want to work towards the other one, I can just freely swap across. And once it's allocated, I have to use a scour to undo it and get that experience
Dude,
back.
already bought it.
Excellent,
Already
that makes
bought it
sense.
while I was on
the nodes
stream.
available on two-handed weapons more powerful than one-handed weapons. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was
Yeah.
just doing a quick dev check to make sure I
Most
wasn't making.
amazing buff
Yeah,
in
nodes
League
on
ever.
two-handed weapons are more powerful than one-handed weapons. You could think of it as, broadly speaking, if you have a two-handed weapon, you're getting the same rough power that you would from having a one-handed weapon dual-wielded or with a shield.
Certainly makes sense. And that kind of like feeds into the next question. Like quivers aren't craftable because a bow is a two-hander and gets that power level, I assume.
Correct. Yeah, we had the choice there of, do we want a bow to be balanced like a one-hand weapon or balanced like a two-hand weapon? And we thought, well, probably balance it like a two-hand weapon and just ignore quivers. It means that we can double down on having powerful bow effects, and players only have to, in that case, craft a tree on one
Hopefully.
item.
Did you ever feel like
Gonna work on
maybe
making
we
Delve
should
great.
give a special exemption to face breakers and similar items that have you not equip a weapon?
It's been discussed, but we
Nick
don't want to
David,
have
the
a philosophy
cocaine
that
bear.
every Path of Exile league must work on literally 100% of builds to its fullest potential, because that really constrains us to really watered down leagues. So in a case here where a Facebreaker character potentially just doesn't get a boost like the other characters do, I mean, they can still play just like they could last league. It's
Yeah,
they're
but
not
you
getting
can
to
use the
enjoy
helm on a Facebreaker, or you could use the
main
shield.
hand weapon damage they're getting from this. They can obviously still craft a shield or various unique items.
Yeah.
It's just various unique
now,
items,
Crucibles,
'cause there's others
like
that'll
these
do it.
passives, specific to weapon types. I assume bows and melee weapons will have different nodes because they want different things. But what about like swords compared to axes, or minion ones compared to non-minion ones?
That'd be really powerful.
Yeah, so essentially
Those-
weapon
those
types do
changes
have
are really good.
mod restrictions. So the examples you give are reasonable. The bows and melee weapons have different ones. Minion ones, caster ones, bows all have their own special passives. I believe in Path of Exile there isn't a lot of direct difference between swords and axes that would cause there to be many skill differences here. So those ones are very similar, but we have tried to make sure it's all sensible. You're not going to get stuff on a weapon that's irrelevant to that weapon.
Great. Will that unique Crucible helmet, the Elabin's Visage, just have a mixture of everything, or how does that work?
That one gets shield ones.
Oh, okay. So shield probably, I assume, then has a more defensive oriented.
Yeah, I believe that it gets shield ones, but it can't give you like static local block and various other bits and pieces that wouldn't work very well.
Now, on unique items, once you add a Crucible tree to a unique item in the Primeval Remnant map, can you progress the tree and unlock nodes in regular Crucible content encounter, or do you have to keep doing the maps?
You can unlock nodes the regular way. So basically, doing that map, if you get the mod on it that enables you to put a Crucible tree on a unique, and I should add that's a moderately common mod, but certainly requires you to get lucky and get it, then you've kind of unlocked the ability for that unique to then have a tree that's explorable. At that point, you can then just go back to regular content in your regular endgame maps and level it up. It's only when you need to get a second copy of that unique unlocked and or do combining that you need to go back to the Primeval Remnant maps.
Now, viewers are always looking for clever ways around the system. I saw one that was if you take a item that already has a Crucible tree and chance it into a unique, does that bypass the Primeval map
That's what
requirement?
I thought too.
Or are you locked
Yes,
from doing that?
It does.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
there
it's a
you go.
bypass. There you go.
Chance orbs going up.
Any solution here that involves more gambling from the players is happy with us.
Okay. Now we have some chat questions on these topics as well. So, Crucible interaction with mirrored and corrupted items. Can you do anything with those, or are they locked out?
Okay, so there's some fun stuff you can do in the higher tier version of the endgame map, the one that's really hard to get. And an example here, and we don't want to spoil too much, but an example, I believe, is that there is a mod which enables you to use, is it a mod or a base property?
A mod on the map item.
Right, a mod on the map item that enables you to interact with corrupted items, for example. And so there are exceptions that you can bypass. I still believe you cannot do anything with mirrored items, right?
No, but if you mirror an item, it copies the tree.
Yeah, so mirroring an item does copy the tree, but once you've got the item mirrored, it's unmodifiable.
Okay, will you, this is a question I think for Ruthless. Will you be able to imprint crucible trees?
Yes, I don't see why not.
Alright, cool. Will Dancing Dervish benefit from
No
a
worries,
passive
Kari, you
tree
have a
while
good
the
one.
item is disabled? This is kind of feeds into questions like about energy blades
Yeah,
and things like
double
that as well,
corrupted.
where you've got weird
Yeah.
contextual changes in how a weapon is used and classified.
We certainly had bugs related to putting energy blades in the crucible. That was a fun time.
Oh, yeah, that does it.
Always.
That was pretty.
Always.
Energy bites doesn't work. I'm not sure about it.
Yeah. We'll have to look into it. I mean, I'm certain the QA team have gone through everything and fixed it all, but that wasn't percolated up to me. But we'll make sure the sensible outcome applies.
Talking now about trade a bit, how will trading items with crucible trees work? Will you be able to search for nodes on the trade site?
We are trying to get that functionality, but it's worth noting the way that this works is the trade site is put together by one of our staff members who's very busy, and he only gets the copy of the league to go and do the trade site stuff like yesterday kind of situation. So he has a week to get Crucible support working, and so we're working on it. It's difficult in this case. We normally can easily, within a week, sort out any itemization stuff that came from a
Yeah,
league, and
gonna
in
be
this case,
really
it's quite
weird.
complicated, as you can imagine. So we have no promises there, but yeah, of course, we wanted to work on the trade site. And it's worth noting we do have an API, so if the public want to take the
That's
API
it.
and implement it better than us or faster than us, they're welcome to do so. But in the meantime, yeah, we'll try to get it up, and we want it so that people can easily identify certain nodes and
Make
trade
it
for the
happen,
items.
boyo.
My expectation is that it will probably be straightforward to find items with a specific node, but doing complicated searches involving combinations of nodes and other stuff will certainly not be possible initially. And so I think that the worst case scenario is players are going to be able to find a bunch of items with a node that they're looking for and then manually examine them to work out which one they actually want to trade for. And that's not a terrible compromise. In fact, it's personally how I prefer it to work, so the trade is a bit sticky.
I know.
go. Here's a
The poor
heap of
developer, though,
coffee. Get
I
it
imagine
done.
this is quite the nightmare on
You
the
don't leave for
web
7
dev
days.
front, but I hope they take our energy and other buildings also take our energy.
That guy's gonna be watching the stream just
No,
going, oh, fuck my
magmatic
life.
ore was something that was kind of just subtly referenced in there. It was said to be a way of having tradable, itemized crucible tree experiences. Hilarious comment. Can you tell us anything more about what these are and what they do?
Right, so it's Crucible Tree experience rather than experiences, which means you gain experience for the tree that you've got. So you consume the magmatic ore, and it levels up your item as though you'd done encounters. And so it's worth noting, this is not meant to be the efficient way to level up items, right? It's certainly not the case that people are going to bypass the encounters and just go and trade for these and they never have to actually play. This is a really inefficient way of doing it, but it is possible. If you're currency rich and time poor and need to find a way to get that last bit of experience, then this is a way to do that. It's kind of like a facetor's lens being a single use item that grants the experience. And I suspect that, it's obviously going to be priced in the economy based on how useful it is, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be the primary way that you level these items up.
Right, gotcha. I mean, I feel like if there's a way of efficiently playing the game by not playing the game, someone will figure it out. In general.
Yeah, it's dangerous for us to add, but we do like the idea of a limited amount of tradability here, and there's various ways to get it as well, which is interesting. Like there's cell nodes on the trees, as we call them, the ones that you can vend. You can vend the item to get some. There's mods on the endgame maps, and it helps a bit because when we were designing the endgame map, we didn't want the individual monsters you're fighting there to work towards leveling up a crucible item when you're already expected to bring multiple crucible items in with you in order to combine the trees together.
Right. Those nodes that allow you to vendor items for different rewards, it's a clever solution to the problem of why engage with the mechanic if you don't have an item that you actively want to forge right now. So how often do you find these nodes, and are they always substantial rewards, or are they some smaller ones as well, like a few alks or a chaos orb?
It's worth noting, we believe that people always will have items they want to forge, and the goal of these vendor nodes is to tempt them away from that. Like at any stage, you could be working towards making the best item on the realm, but instead, oh, there's a divine orb if I just sink in a bunch of encounters into getting that. And so it's a job well done of these nodes if you are sitting there getting
Looks like
currency
you can get
rather
it
than
from
actually
Act 1,
making the most
based
broken
on
items.
what they were showing in the,
Having said
in the
that, we
trailer.
suspect people will work out the
So you
value
can
of the
get, like,
broken
early
items and realize
buffs
that
on
it's
your
worth going
items,
for.
or
In
early
terms of
buffs
how
on
often
your
you find
earlier
them,
items.
they're mostly in the end game, and they're not too common. Like you're not going to be sitting there with a stash full of them trying to, just swim in currency. But at the same time, you'll probably have access if you need one and you don't have a thing you particularly want to focus on at the moment. It's just so encounters don't feel entirely wasted. There are also some cool little tricks and combos that we aren't going to delve into, but it's worth having a look at that. In terms of what types of currency, it's various currency, starting at mid-tier stuff. If you do find things like Chaos Orbs, they'll be in larger quantity, and you'll have to do the math of basically how much
So,
experience
this
am I
is
getting
dull for
versus
me.
what the currency payoff is versus what other opportunities I have for my time at the moment. And, it'll be straightforward to work out which ones you're wanting to do and which ones you're wanting to trade away.
Bissen, Delve, and Bossing.
On the maps side of thing, how rare are those like geodes that you can crack to get those maps, the like end game content of this?
So there's 2 tiers, and it's worth noting the acquisition here is subtly different than the way we normally do these maps. Like, these are always rare, and they come through this stacked deck like currency item, which is the geode that you crack open.
I would
And
say
because it comes
so,
with a currency item,
but
your
we'll
ability
have
to
to
find
see
rare
how it
items
works
doesn't
and
affect
how
the
the
rate
patch
that you
notes are
find these. Like,
structured
you're
around
getting
that.
just
Item level
currency
seems like
essentially
it
to get
be
them,
the
and
reason
then there's
for
the
dictating
the unwrapping
territory.
experience of seeing what the mods are on it. Now, the lower tier one is something you'll certainly play in maps often, right? Like, it's, you're not finding it every map. Maybe you're not even finding it every 4 or 5 maps, but you are finding it pretty commonly. So you're getting a lot of access to combining trees together. The higher tier one, on the other hand, is harder to get because that lets you do some really interesting stuff. So that one is certainly pitched quite a lot rarer than the first one.
And you're being pretty coy on these maps and what they entail and what the higher
Yeah.
version does now.
And this is for a few reasons, right? Like, first of all the rates I'm talking about here, like, they're changing in this last week. This last week is the point where we massage it from being this works and is cool into a fine machine that works perfectly with the right, economic implications and so on. We're starting the alpha shortly, like, in 10 minutes kind of thing. And that's going to give us really good feedback there. We've got a week of iteration now that everything is working and great, and so
Vortex
things
would
will
be
change.
pretty
There will be
OP
more
too,
mods
dude.
added, there'll be mods
Imagine
removed.
Aegis
And so
Aurora
if I
with a
go into
skill
too much
tree on
detail
it.
of listing every mod, it's just going to be wrong a week from now when we've had time to really
Be
hone it.
insanely overpowered.
Fair enough. Let's talk a bit about the challenge of this league. So, the longer you channel the Crucible Forge in a map encounter, the more dangerous it becomes. What makes the monsters dangerous here?
So as you channel it, more monsters are spawned, and they combine into larger, more impactful monsters. So
Oh.
higher tier monsters here, we've got an internal tiering system. The higher tier monsters are generally more likely to be magic, rare, or unique. And the longer you
I'd say
channel,
so
the
too,
more
yeah.
damage and damage reduction every monster gets.
All
Also, more difficult encounters are more rewarding. So generally speaking, play the hardest encounters you can. But it's worth noting, and this is an interesting question, everyone comes up with, is there a button I can click to bypass the channeling and just have the hardest difficulty encounter, right? Fair enough, no one likes having to wait a few seconds, but it's worth noting the hardest difficulty encounter will probably smear you to the wall. We want
not fucking likely.
wishful thinking
We
because some
play
Path of
Delve in
Exile
this
players are very
place.
capable, but we're trying
We're
very
made
hard
for
to make
this.
it so that the highest difficulty encounters are significantly harder than League content that you may have accidentally run into in the past. Now, of course, you don't need to max it out like that. Maybe only do that if you have ridiculous twink items or something. We are also trying to signal this in the UI. This wasn't shown in the video, but we are having kind of like a temperature concept where the harder it's getting, the more you see the UI getting a bit angry at you. And so I can generally handle about this amount of difficulty, and you've got an idea of where your character falls on the scale. You're certainly going to want to go as hard as you can, but our goal here when designing these risk versus reward leagues is to kill your character. We want to set it up so you overcommit and get nothing, because that way you'll learn your abilities and it's a little less gifty than if we just had every encounter succeedable.
It's like Metamorph all over again with players putting sticks in their own front tires and being like, oh no, why have I crashed? Oh. Cool.
Yes.
On that note, then, what happens if you fail a Crucible encounter? Is there some risk reward aspect here, just outside of dying?
You only get the Crucible tree experience if you complete the encounter, but your item is not at risk. We went moderately safe with that. So essentially, if you make an encounter that's too hard, you might lose experience on your main character or lose your hardcore character or something if you die. But realistically, the only thing you're practically missing out on is finishing the encounter to get the experience.
Now, I noticed on the Primeval Remnant map teaser, there was a mod, players cannot suppress spell damage. I know the intention is to make these maps very challenging, but how do you approach making monsters harder versus disabling aspects of builds or hampering the player when it comes to designing difficulty?
So the mods on the maps are meant to be very dangerous. Like, we picked mods here that are like Expedition Remnants almost. Like, we want something that's very challenging. But you get fewer of them than on a regular map because half of them are upsides. So 6 modded map here has 3 upsides, 3 downsides. And the downside ones, some of them will raise the difficulty of the monsters, usually by a bunch, and some of them will hamper your build's defenses or potentially make your build not work in the map. But it's worth noting that stuff like spell suppression is more of a hampering your defenses than saying you can't kill monsters. So certainly going into a no spell suppression map when you rely on it takes away one of your defensive attributes, like be careful about that, but it's not necessarily completely breaking it for you. You're going to have to make decisions about which to play. And we strongly prefer that way of designing it. If we have to make it so that every map is playable on every character without really imposing any difficulty, then it just becomes a bit of mush. And so, in this case, you will occasionally open a geode, look forward to doing the map, and realize it's better for your friend to do it, and maybe you'll trade with one that you can do. And if you're playing an SSF and don't have the ability to trade, then you just have to make decisions about whether you run it or don't run it as the other option, or run it carefully, or make another character and play that character in that map to get value from it, and so on and so on.
All right. I always have to ask, party play, how does it work in Crucible?
So it fully works in a party. Everyone gets experience.
Oh.
Basically, you must channel an item at the encounter at least a little bit to be rewarded for it. So there's the molten circle, as you've seen, and basically the players step inside and you choose an item and channel it. And all the channeling makes the encounter harder and more rewarding and so on. And as long as you've contributed at least a second of channeling or whatever, you're going to be taking part in it. Once anyone who is channeled steps outside of the molten ring, a countdown starts which will trigger the encounter. And it's worth noting that throughout maps, that means you can fully engage with these without any problem or loss. Like, sure, maybe, some annoying party member will make the encounter way too hard for everyone, but they have the ability to do that elsewhere in the game too. In endgame maps, each map only allows the map owner to use its crafting benches. So one geode equals one map equals one craft. You can bring your friends, they can get stuff from it, but they can't use that craft unless they contributed the map.
Some more questions from chat. How does item level and map tier affect Crucible? Can I quarry farm item level 86 weapons, they ask?
All right.
The low level areas have way less Crucible experience.
Yeah, so low level areas give quite a lot less Crucible experience. There's an exponential curve on that to encourage you. Like, if you're playing somewhere 10 levels under you, you're certainly going to have a much better time just doing it in the maps that you're playing. Any other aspects that are worth mentioning?
Item level affects how much experience it requires to level up.
That's true. So the item level does affect
Item
experience
level
costs for
does
hitting
affect
certain
it.
skills. And of course, I believe that certain skills are gated behind certain levels as well, right? You really do want to be playing higher level stuff. Like, maybe there's some niche place where you can get access to a certain skill and it isn't too expensive to get it and you can quarry farm more efficiently, but you're kind of wasting your time doing that compared to just playing the maps that... In an old version of Path of Exile, where map scarcity was more of a thing, like in, say, Ruthless, where it's actually hard to play maps because it economically destroys you to play too many, then fair enough, quarry farming might be a more reasonable strategy. But I think that in contemporary mainline Path of Exile, you're wasting your time if you're spending too long in the quarry here.
Now, the mobs that you spawn with the channeling of the Crucible, are these different to normal mobs, or are they enhanced versions of regular
reckon,
mobs?
man.
And either way, are they something that
The
you can turn into a
easiest.
Spectre, for example? Summoner players would like to know.
There's a few questions there. So they are actually themed around the properties of the item, which is interesting. Like, there's a light correlation between what you've got on the item you're channeling. This is some subtlety here, but they are special. And in general, for these leagues, we try to draw monsters from the pool that are in the area, or at least, the models of those monsters, just for memory reasons and so on. Is there anything else that's special about these monsters here, aside from the fact that they're quite a lot harder if you make the encounter hard?
Yeah, they have new skills. And they are spectrable.
Yeah, so all spectrable, all have new skills. There is essentially a separate set of Crucible monsters.
None of that is what I expected.
I actually personally underestimated how important new monsters are for league design. Like, we've done a lot of these leagues, like 38 or 39. And if you sat me in a room alone without any other devs and got me to list what goes into a league, I'd forget new monsters. But a lot of people here realize it's critical to have it so the texture of the moment-to-moment combat with monsters does feel different than the rest of the game in a league. And so that's been quite interesting as something that honestly took me a lot of years of development of Path of Exile before I realized how important that was.
You said the modifiers on the item affect what monsters spawn. That's such a clever nuance.
Tree modifiers, like
Okay,
the tree that you're leveling up.
Cool.
You'll see what we mean. It's not a big deal. It's just cute.
I mean, that's what I mean. Like, that's really cute. Like, it's a cute detail, a nuance that I wouldn't have expected. Neat.
I know we're rushed to make these expansions in the cycle time we have, but we do get time to finesse the details. And interestingly, this cycle has been 17 weeks, so we've had a few extra weeks to get it right. And yeah, I don't mean to prematurely curse anything, but we're actually looking at a pretty good place quality-wise. Like, the number of issues we have open in our tracker and the stress on the team is significantly lower than it has been at various points. Like, I think yesterday, when we're at the point where we would in the past have had 250 open issues, we're at like 87 by my count. And so, I'm not seeing overtime being done outside of a little bit of preparation for the live stream the last few evenings. And so that's looking pretty good. I think that, like the incursion launch, we're going to be hitting it with like a bit of time to spare and make sure everything's good.
That's excellent to hear, and
Yeah.
details like that, nuances like that as well. I think they really add to the like flavor of it. You know, this weapon that you've been working on for a while is going to feel different to craft than a different weapon in a subtle way that you might not even put your finger on, and that's quite cool. So let's move on to a League revamps topic now. So the Breach revamp, I feel, is actually a really clever way of dealing with the issue of like old content bloat, or of the game being too overwhelming for new players. Revamp older content, shift it up to a higher level where it's discovered later and less likely to overwhelm those newer players. Now, was this the intention here, or just a happy side effect?
It's a happy
don't
side
even know
effect,
what
but
to
one that we
play right
definitely
now.
acknowledge. So the basic way that the Breach revamp happened was we started by saying, man, there are a lot of splinters in Breach, and it feels crap to click on every splinter, and they kind of are worthless because you're working towards a Breach Stone when you pick up a bunch of them, and that Breach Stone is going to be lower level than you are right now. Like, you're not going to care about that Breach Stone. You're going to want to upgrade it multiple times before you can run it. So how do we fix this? We thought, wouldn't it be cool if splinters were rarer, so they're impactful and there's less clicks, and they actually led to something immediately good? And so we realized, oh look, let's take breach stones and just like bump them up a bunch of levels and basically make breach stones themselves valuable, because in their current form it's like based around an old version of Path of Exile. And then we realized we can just remove 3 tiers of breach stones in this case, and we just cascaded the chain of tidy ups from there until eventually breach is pitched at way more impactful, tighter than before, higher power level, more valuable splinters, and that's where we ended up.
Will you still have to do things like click breach hands in the thick of combat and like pick up those kind of scattered drops afterwards?
Yes, you do. And we think
Yeah.
that clicking chests during the hectic combat with the chests vanish at the end is actually part of the fun of Breach. Like, here is a glimpse into another world where monsters are rushing in from all directions. What can you get? Can you kill them in time? Can you get the chests? Blah, blah, blah. It's part of the challenge of the short flash encounter here, is to get as many items you can through whatever means. And so we didn't want to make it so it automatically gives you your entitlement of chest items at the end. Now, picking up scattered items is
Oh,
annoying.
I'm just
I get
looking
that,
at my
right? There's
Blazing
no,
Salvo
this is
tree
not an
and going,
intentional thing that we're trying to make the
"How's
player
this
have to run around afterwards and look to see if stuff drops. But we didn't find any good solutions that solved all cases, right? Like, during this process, there wasn't
my
an
thinking
easy
face on."
way of sorting that out that fit in with the other changes we're making. But we're going to keep an eye out on feedback. It's certainly something we're open to changing in the future if we find a good solution.
The Abyss revamp looks great. I don't really have any
Abyss
specific
is gonna
questions
be
about
pretty
that
good.
one. Maybe chat will. But can we hope to see similar quality passes on more dated things in the future? Like, for example, Harbinger, maybe?
Yeah, it's very likely. No promises though on when. Like, for 322, we haven't scoped out what endgame improvements are looking like yet, so it could well include Harbinger, or definitely not, and we don't know yet.
And back to that kind of initial question, which was
There was a drop there.
the idea of like content bloat or things being a bit overwhelming for new players. Is this something that you guys recognize as a major issue, especially in the lead up to?
Oh, I'm just playing with my Blazing Salvo tree in the background. Don't mind me.
The game with a lot of stuff going on. And your point about raising the level of breach to take it away from, your introduction to maps is very valid. It becomes a thing where you know Path of Exile pretty well by the point that it's introduced. And it's difficult towing the line between... How to describe this? It's difficult towing the line between lots of content being available and content being introduced at a slow pace. One of our competitive advantages versus other action RPGs is the fact we have a vast library of old content that's fleshed out. But on the other hand, that can be a problem because for new players, when they have to understand 20 complicated systems or 50 complicated systems,
It's too much.
it's sometimes easier to play other games that require less learning. So we're trying to make sure that many of these do actually feel pretty optional, and you get them, it's no problem for them to learn how Breach works several weeks into playing, potentially.
Yeah, the curve is
A
pretty
bunch of people are
hefty.
also asking if there's any news on Ultimatum.
We have mentioned in the past that we have a plan for Ultimatum. That plan is definitely still happening, but
Keep
not part of
roving him about
321.
that,
Fair
Oh,
enough. I'll just check every time until.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be announced at ExileCon.
Maybe.
Okay. Is Ritual being looked at for improvement? It got hit pretty bad due to the removal of +1 monster level watchstones. This is a question from chat.
It hasn't been discussed yet, but as I mentioned, we haven't worked out the next set of endgame improvements, so fair enough. It'll be on the list to look at.
Is there any plans to change Blight Atlas Tree notables? Half of them are there to guarantee Blight events when there's already Sextons and Scarabs.
We actually did a pretty deep look at Blight on the Atlas Tree a
Yeah,
few months ago, and there were some
I
inconsistencies
think
we
you
wanted to
bang on
tidy
with that
up.
comment, Bill.
Again, I can't promise that's in scope for 322, but yeah, it certainly is something that we probably need to evaluate.
All right. Talking a bit about now masteries and ascendancies, is there's some pretty big announcements there. One in particular that like really impressed me was the life mastery that gives 15% life if your body armor has no life on it. That kind of feels like a game changer in some ways. Body armor has always had really fierce competition, and whether something has life or not is a big part of the like evaluation there. So I really like this design overall, but we do have some unique items that have 5 to 10% increased life, and I imagine that might feel like a bit of a bummer if you want to use one of those.
Well, in that case, you save yourself a passive point, and you get to, go pick a different mastery, and there are some powerful ones to pick instead.
That's true, a lot of the other ones.
We're not intending to go and remove life off those because of the presence of the mastery. That'll feel pretty mandatory.
That'd be such a funny way to solve that problem.
Yes.
Fine then, no life. Now this consolation style design that like makes up for a shortfall feels like kind of new ground here, and it might have some potential use cases in other areas. Like for example, the idea of 20% increased movement speed if your boots don't have movement speed. Is this something you'd consider expanding out with in other areas?
It's currently just on the life mastery. I mean, we've got other interesting new designs on the other masteries, of course, and it is a possibility for later, but we want to be careful with this one because, like in the boots case, for example, I worry that soon you'd pick, the masteries that make your gear good, and then it doesn't really matter what your items are, as long as you, for the love of God, don't roll that movement speed or life. And that's kind of against most of how people are trained to create items in Path of Exile. So we're experimenting with body armors with life, but other things follow normal rules for a while.
Yeah, it is. It does seem kind of like an experimental thing because you're right. Like it could go the other way to what you want, where it's like warping perceptions of items in unpleasant ways potentially. So interesting. I'll be keen to see how this one goes then. A lot of the other masteries look really impactful as well. I was pretty surprised to see instant leech after that being such an issue in the past. For example,
Yeah, I can too.
a
Plus,
lot of
with
people have been
the
hoping
item
for like
skill
a
tree
meta
as well.
shake-up in terms of changing skills specifically, but here we're getting like a bunch of new Val skills obviously have an impact, and then like all of these masteries and passive changes and stuff like that. Now, what factors kind of go into deciding whether you want to rebalance a skill or the other things like gear and passives around a build, rather?
So regarding the meta shakeup, we could at any point go and pick a bunch of skills and alter their damage values and so on. And we've done that in the past, and it hasn't really been as impactful as we wanted. Often what will happen if we buff things that are underused is people don't immediately notice, and then a while later someone stumbles across it, and that doesn't immediately cause the feeling of a new meta that people wanted. It feels like the same meta even though there's stuff they haven't found. And so we wanted to try in this case leaving the skills alone for the most part. I mean, there's skill balance. You'll read it in the patch notes in a little while. But for the most part, a lot of the changes come from the fact that broadly, many of the masteries have been changed. 2 specific ascendancies have been changed. You've got a lot of new Val skills
not
for many,
actively
many different
nerfing.
builds. And the masteries in particular have a big impact here because they're right in your face when you're doing your tree planning. You certainly see all of these interesting new ways of building. Like an example is, let's look at stun for a second, right? Previously, everything to do with stun in the game was about how do I make it happen less and how do I have it affect my character less, right? Shorter stuns,
Can
less
we
frequently.
perma-stun bosses?
There's stun stuff now, which encourages you to get stunned if you want to build that way. There's a passive that gives you adrenaline for like 2 seconds per 100 milliseconds of stun, I think. Is that right? Yeah. So if you can find a way of having 350 milliseconds of stun inflicted on you every 7 seconds, then you've got adrenaline permanently. And sure, that may not even be a good build, but it's a build you could do. And so we're trying with these masteries
Bill's
to
here.
completely
Bill, don't
rethink
you
how
get
they
any
interact
fucking
with these
ideas,
mechanics.
buddy.
To answer your question, though, about how what factors decide whether we rebalance a skill or other things, we haven't done a Passover mastery since they were first released, and so they weren't what we would call like modernized. And so before we go and just tweak numbers on a skill, we want to make sure that the supporting systems have been modernized. Like the breach thing, for example, which isn't a meta change, that had been a while before it had been modernized, and so it's sitting there just kind of out of whack with the rest of the game. It's not worth running until now. And so we wanted to make sure the masteries were really good scaffolding for builds before we went to tweak individual numbers.
We'll see, man.
Very cool. I wanted to deep dive a little bit into the design theory behind Saboteur. So I was pretty initially skeptical of the idea of like adding nodes that aren't about traps or mines, the core identity there. But those trigger bots look pretty awesome. Kind of changed
Put
my
your
mind a
list
little
together,
bit.
Bill.
They're quite unique. How do you go about
I'm
making
all
sure that
ears.
the rest of an ascendancy feels up to the task and has some choices for players to make? So, for example, you've got like Perfect Crime, the bots, and Like Clockwork, the cooldowns. Both are really great. And then you've got some other more contextual nodes in Explosives at Work, Expert, and Bomb Specialist. Those are like limited to crit or cold AoE builds, for example. But they're still potentially usable. But then everything else is traps and mines, that core identity. There's like such a big divide between the two play styles there that there's not really any overlap in the nodes. So you potentially run into an issue where when you do something like this, you have no real choices to make because all of them are, you've only got the choices that make sense for the build and the others are completely irrelevant. So that feels like a potentially a little bit one-dimensional for Path of Exile. So kind of how do you get in? How do you get to this point?
There's been a lot of iteration of a Saboteur, including recently. Like, we had a version in the live stream that we're ready to prepare, we're confident in, and we're good to go. And there was enough internal kind of, it might be perceived as a nerf going on that we went and changed it further, made sure that it was, we were much more comfortable with it, added more. Did we add entire nodes to it? Or we literally added a node to it to make sure that there was more choice and that it worked better. Refilmed the sections of the live stream, got me back in the recording studio to do the voiceover of that, and updated the live stream at the last minute because we want to make sure that the different builds work. And the Saboteur is a little bit of a different experience than before because it now has these other options. But it also, and most importantly, is not the only way to play traps and mines. Our goal here is that if the word trap or mine comes up in your build guide, it doesn't 100% have an association with Saboteur. There are trap and mine builds with other ascendancies now. Like with Necromancer, how if you want to use minions, it's possible to come up with minion builds that are on a different ascendancy. And so the Saboteur is the obvious place to go for easy access to trap and mine power, as well as like trigger stuff, right? It's the first point of call, but it certainly isn't the final point of call for people who want to do some really wacky stuff.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah,
man.
and that kind of like raises a good counterpoint, which is like, while there might not be a bunch of different choices for trigger builds in Saboteur besides the ones laid out, you have all of the other classes to decide. So picking Saboteur in the first place is that choice. So
Yes.
that, and fun new playstyles added.
The trigger bots are pretty OP.
They look awesome. So cool. Does the new passive reworks to the two classes affect Ascendant at all?
Did we change the Ascendant?
Yes, we did.
Yep. That's cool. I
Awesome.
didn't know that. Good work. Yes, we have.
Good job, background devs.
I want to look at that now.
Do you folks plan on changing passives around the tree or just the masteries that are changing?
Yeah, there are passives that have changed around the tree,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, there's new clusters, and I mean the patch notes
What was
which we
that from
posted as soon
Gary?
as we stopped talking have all the details. But it was mentioned in the live stream too, just in passing. Like how I mentioned early game balance changes, and then everyone comes to me and says, "Why are you not talking about the early game balance changes at the live stream?"
Yeah,
Sure.
there was life
deal.
recovery clusters. There was a few new clusters scattered around to increase access to masteries, and there was +1 projectiles.
Yep.
So that was pretty spicy. Okay. Here's a question about
Let's wait for
Sab.
that.
If Sabo trigger bots trigger your spells on them, how do those trigger bots cost mana to trigger? Like, do those spells cost
Yeah.
mana?
Like regular triggering,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, it's just like regular triggering. The difference is there are two trigger bots. They run at the enemies like you'd expect. It triggers from both of them, and instead of just purely doubling your damage and moving it onto the enemies, there is this minor damage penalty so that it's not quite, literally double damage, but still obviously is a big boost.
All right. Let's talk about a couple other random questions. You mentioned a fair amount of early game changes that changed the racing meta, though this is the sort of thing that affects everyone. So what sort of early game changes can we expect? And by the way, Bex, let's flip something involving support gems.
you do.
Sorry.
Yeah. So we actually have another whole skill gem and 3 support gems that we didn't even talk about in the live stream. It's 1 main skill and 3 supports, right, guys? Snipe, Mana Forged Arrows, Prismatic Burst, Momentum, I think? Yeah. So it's interesting how this happens, really, but we ummed and ahed about what to do about the ExileCon races for so long, right? Because we didn't want to just say, oh, look, it's the same Katava kill as last time, go. Because then we get exactly the same race with exactly the same racers, and it's just a repeat of the 2019 event. But at the same time, when we looked at other wacky races we could do, they didn't feel like Path of Exile. Like, Path of Exile Racing is a celebration of how quickly can you play through the game without wacky mods involved? And so people, when we asked them what they liked about watching the races at ExileCon, was the fact that the races are doing everything that the normal players are doing
So
just
pretty
so
fun to
well.
watch.
Like they're just so optimized with their stuff. So we wanted to make sure they were playing true Path of Exile. The problem is true Path of Exile is more or less pretty similar to what it was in 2019. So we said, well, what if the racing strategy is different? What if we just went and improved the early game
Have a
in a
good one,
way that doesn't
Curls.
have significant impact on the actual meta of the late game, and just did a whole bunch of tidy up in ways that really affect races? And that way, the racers can play 321, which is released in a week. We'll do all the qualifiers during 321, and that's also the version of Path of Exile that's live at ExileCon, because 322 is coming out a couple of weeks after ExileCon. So it perfectly fits a consistent set of balance that we can keep the same for fairness. And so many changes were made, and this involved some pretty radical stuff. Controversially, and this is explained better in the patch notes,
tough,
we removed
man.
the Onslaught support gem
I'm
from
not even. Don't
early game
fucking
situations.
troll.
There's honestly, the patch
troll.
notes do a much better job than I do of explaining it, but in return, other gems have been introduced which achieve similar goals to it. And so I'd recommend reading the patch notes for the full detail, but there are several new gems which do affect in-game builds, and that they're now options you have available. The favorite one that I was reading about recently was this cool like semi-active, semi-support gem, which is called Snipe, which our internal description that has probably been improved since this was written was channel to charge up your bow, gaining stages, release to trigger one linked bow skill for each stage gained, and a few other caveats.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know.
And so
right?
basically you can channel and then release
I
a
don't know
bunch
what
of
he
bow
does
skills
now. I
at the
think he
same
works
time.
for GGG.
So cool stuff like that has come out of this. And yeah, it's, balance changes. There's going to be some nerfs in there. There's going to be some buffs, but they do not have a large impact on endgame Path of Exile. So do, when reading the patch notes, take it with a bit of a grain of salt at the fact this is aimed at the early game.
This is interesting because, like, in the past, the idea was talked about of having like some skills that were like the low level ones, and then potentially you would transition them out of it. But it's not something that's really true to Path of Exile very often. Like most of the time, most things that you can use in early game are end game viable as well. So this is kind of more a design of having some things that potentially are very early game and not really necessarily
like Uber
intended for late
Killer
game.
OP.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll explore like skills more in that realm in the future as well? And is that, I don't know, something that Path of Exile 2 will feature more?
Well, Path of Exile 2 gives us an opportunity to somewhat tidy up what skills there are, and we're moving things around between levels and basically having a chance to, because it's a game that obviously involves many changes, having a chance to actually review stuff. So that helps with us working out what are the early and high versions of things. Obviously, we can make those changes in current Path of Exile 1. It's just that it comes at a cost where we take something and break it for high levels, or take it away from early levels and suddenly build, say, hey, I was using that. And, there's certainly a live cost to that.
Now I see a few things come up in chat repeatedly, so I'll touch on those. Some other Ascendancy players. What was that?
I was asking, they want us to log in.
That's certainly that.
Okay.
There's a few other Ascendancy players who want reassurance that their Ascendancy will be addressed. I see Gladiator mentioned a lot.
Yeah, we could list the 17 Ascendancies. We don't yet know which ones are coming. Shall I tell a story? Okay, I'm going to tell you a story. Sorry, everyone who's on patch notes. We're getting story time instead. We wanted to nerf all the Ascendancies in Ruthless for power reasons. And so we looked into what that would involve. Pretty quick numeric nerfs. And while doing so, we came up with a whole bunch of new interesting stats. And we said, okay, well, we cannot release these stats in just Ruthless, right? Because that would be crazy. The community who already have low patience for any Ruthless stuff that we do would certainly find it unfair that we gave Ruthless a bunch of new interesting tools alongside a pile of nerfs. So we said, why don't we change all the Ascendancies in the core game to use these new stats as well? Not nerfing them, just making them like we've done with the Pathfinder and the Saboteur here. And so we started on that. And the plan was to do about half the Ascendancies in 321, and then also do all the Ruthless ones at the same time, figuring that's fair because there's enough stuff given to the base game. Unfortunately, we didn't get it to a state where it would actually be releasable. Many of those Ascendancies were going well, but they weren't quite finished. The internal feedback was to the point where it felt a little bit like a nerf in some cases, or it felt too much like a buff, or we weren't quite there, and we obviously can't release it unless we've had time. So then we had a situation where we're really happy with Pathfinder and Saboteur. They're going great. And all the Ruthless ones are sitting there with new stats on them. And so we intentionally undid all the Ruthless changes there to stop there being an outcry, and so that we get more time to sit on it and work out what we're doing in the base game. And so the intention is that we do have stockpiled a large number of ascendancy changes from when we get time to do it properly, which hopefully will include many in 322. And we just have to work out politically what we do with said ruthless changes, because I would love to release them. I mean, they're not quite ready. Like, I'm not saying we want permission to put them in 321, but we're at some stage likely to debut that set of stuff because we do feel the power level of ascendancies and ruthless is too high relative to items. And so, long story short, in answer to the question of when do the other ascendancy classes get some love, the love is half done. And so, yeah, it's coming.
The political intricacies at play here.
Yeah, it's just the problem is like while this expansion ended up with a lot of balance changes, and we're not worried about that, there was a time period when we hadn't piled in so many balance changes where it looked like half the work went towards Ruthless. And that's not a good look, because it's done for the purpose of the core game. It's just if you release it in Ruthless first, you just upset everyone for no reason. And so there's a bit of politics with that, but at the same time, we definitely want to make sure that all the players feel equally valued.
Since you brought it up, let's chat Ruthless a little bit briefly. Will it have its own unique cosmetic rewards now that it's getting challenges? And if so, how many?
It has the same cosmetic rewards as the base game. This is
Okay.
another case here of trying to go for fairness. You can either earn the cool armor set by playing regular Path of Exile or by playing Ruthless.
Yeah,
I don't know which
nobody's
is
gonna
easier.
play
There are fewer
Ruthless.
challenges in Ruthless, but it's quite hard to do those in Ruthless.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's difficult to say. I recommend working out what your capabilities are and doing it in that mode. And there is a different totem flag. So if you do complete the challenges in Ruthless and in the base game, you technically get 2 hideout totems to show that you did.
Another bunch of people have had a chance to play Ruthless and try it out. There's been some discussion of the difficulty and whether it's a fun type of difficulty or rather where it's just slower. How do you feel about the initial version of how it's played out and the types of challenge that it offers?
We really like it internally. It emphasizes how fun items can be to find when you're desperately craving upgrades. Like, I get that
Yeah,
it's
I
not
don't
for
know.
everyone,
I'm not
they
a
don't
big
have to
fan
play
of
it, but it's an experience of overcoming
Phil
scarcity
probably will play
and
that.
feeling every upgrade to your character that we think is a really valuable thing. And what's interesting is some people, when playing it, say, to be honest, regular Path of Exile, like baseline Path of Exile that a new player installs, could actually be Ruthless, and they might have a better time than the overcrowded, very complicated mainline version that we currently have. Now, we don't plan to make that change where we swap them around, just in terms of what the new player experience people get, but it is true that if you're sitting someone down for the first time, they get a bit more of a meaningful and less complicated experience playing in that mode. Having said that, it's still an experiment, it's still a passion project that we're tinkering away with, but it also educates us a lot on the appropriate balance for item mods and how, like the fact that Eternal Orbs could come back, for example, is a realization we made that was actually pretty cool. And looking at the consequences of the different types of crafting and how they interact has been very instrumental for us. And this is all important because we have to get this stuff right with the upcoming Path of Exile 2 balance, right? We have to make sure the Path of Exile 2 is balanced as a great game from the start.
It's
that's true.
almost like it's a useful dev tool more than anything in that regard.
Yeah, and there's a growing community of people enjoying it, which is why we've got the boss kill race happening in Ruthless. I know that'll be controversial to some players who don't particularly want to play it, but they weren't going to win that race anyway, right? Like the people who are going to win that race know why we're putting it in Ruthless.
Oh no. Damn.
We also don't know if it even is winnable. Like, to emphasize here, Ruthless, Solo Self-Found, Hardcore, both pinnacle bosses, right? That's hard.
Yeah.
There's a ticking clock before those ExileCon tickets aren't valid anymore, right? The event.
It would take me that entire time to get there, that's for sure. For my own experience, a lot of the early game feelings I had echoed what you were talking about, with like the changes were very effective in making you really like feel gear upgrades and think about how you play your character, and those sorts of challenge changes were really effective. For me though, where it fell apart was actually at that end game, where the scarcity, the economy, and the map drops were so slow that even when I felt ready, I couldn't really progress in endgame at what I felt like it was a reasonable pace. Even dedicating the entirety of my currency supply towards maps, I was still kind of blanking and dropping back down to low white tier maps. And I've seen plenty of people break through this wall, so it's certainly possible, but it is slow and it bears mentioning, I think. How do you feel about like the end game progression there?
So we've made some adjustments to this in 321,
Yeah,
but we
true.
don't want to overshoot the mark. Like, we don't want to just dramatically swing something in a way that makes maps sustain too easy. It is intentional that maintaining the highest maps requires significant economic sacrifice in Ruthless, which, as you say, some people can break through, but it's essentially the case that you almost have to just pay, a very high price to be playing red maps repeatedly, and that's in the right direction for Ruthless, and we do want it to be a little more accessible than it currently is. So I'm hoping the changes in 321 do help a bit there, but we'll keep nudging it. We just don't want to accidentally get it to the point where everyone's got expectations of sitting in red maps like they do in the base game.
All right, so potentially some smaller changes there, fine tuning things out. The Atlas tree is different in Ruthless. Chat wants to know if we'll be getting gateways there as well.
Yep.
Cool, very nice. We have a random eclectic mix of chat questions now, so I'm just gonna jump straight into these. I have not seen what they are yet, so let's have a go. Lucky Dip, do we need to equip the weapon to level it in Crucible, or can we use any weapon in our inventory?
It has to be equipped, but it can be on your weapon swap. The intention here is that you can't be playing, say, a bow character and have some really high level wand that you're necessarily working on without sacrifice. You are making things for you. And this is also so that you're guaranteed to be carrying the item around with you. You're not having to sacrifice inventory space for it. There's a bunch of things that went into that decision, but essentially, yeah, stick the item on your weapon swap if it's not the primary one you're currently using.
Does that work if the item's disabled? Because you can do some stuff where you like put an Astramantis on and then equip the item and then take the Astramantis off and it goes red, but it's still equipped.
We'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true, man.
Now chat's just doing the classic Q&A thing where they're spamming melee ? Like there's a question there. You do know that questions involve a few more words than that usually, but maybe that's enough for you to work off. Melee?
So in the last expansion, we intentionally introduced a large number of Valve skills and some other melee changes. And so the intention with the melee Valve skills was to raise the power level of all of those skills because periodically you get to play them in God mode for a few seconds. And we haven't made as many melee changes in this particular release here, and that's partly because there are, the other 90% of players also would like balance changes. So we definitely have it on the radar to keep an eye on, but there's nothing else in 321 apart from what you'll see in the patch notes rather soon.
Yep, so advanced skills and masteries and a couple fine tunes here. So have a read in a second when I stop talking. What happens if you animate a weapon with a crucible tree? Oh,
It works.
oh the
Do
new
you expect
level.
less from Path of Exile?
No, I expected it to work actually. I'm impressed because I imagine there's some complicated things there, but
I shouldn't have done a dev check there. I should have eye contact with the camera. It works, and then quickly, they scurry to make it work.
Even things that like allocate passives, does that work? Because they don't have a passive tree, right? Surely those don't work.
There's the ones that make sense for it to work will work, but I don't think. Oh, like Master Fletcher, for example, right?
Oh.
It should work. Like at the end of the day, right? Animated guardians and animated weapons are just like entities that get stats, right? Like if you give an animated weapon +1 arrows or something, it's going to fire +1 arrows, like a monster would, like the player would.
Yeah, but you're giving it a passive that then gives the +1 arrows. That implies they have a passive tree. Does that imply they have a soul?
Oh, it's technically that we're not giving it the passive. We're giving it the stat and we're calling it the passive. But we're getting into like internals here. Maybe we are giving it. Anyway, we're fine. It'll work.
Do animate guardians have souls?
That raises ethical questions. Some players.
Oh god, okay. Does things like pack size affect Crucible? I assume map modifiers will in general, right?
So here's an interesting one. The items that are shown in the live stream do include pack size on those the rare maps there, and that doesn't affect the
So in the in-game area, pack size doesn't exist. In regular maps, pack size does influence the value of the monster's spin spawn.
Right, okay. Yep, so the bit I was getting at was more of a side point, which is that pack size doesn't exist on the endgame maps that, the Crucible specific ones. The pictures on the live stream do show it. That's because we hadn't removed it at that stage, and this is because it had no way of really juicing up the size of the encounters you're finding there, so we went with quantum rarity instead. With regard to with regard to the base game, if you get pack size on your maps, it will increase the value of the Crucible monsters in their encounters, so it is beneficial to have it.
Once upon a time, GG entertained the idea of permanent skin transfers, destroying an item to create a permanent NTX. Is there any word on this, or has it been abandoned as unfeasible?
It's hard, and we haven't done it yet, but it's certainly something that we don't have philosophical problems with.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to worry about melee until
All
PoE
right.
2.
Chat, you been spamming anything else?
I'm going to go log in soon.
Yeah, log in. Is that the spam?
Play some Crucible.
It's still typing melee. Any changes planned for expedition gear? What's next with Ward?
I'm unaware of any changes planned for expedition gear at the moment. I mean, at this stage, it's pretty much a matter of they can read the patch notes in a couple of minutes, and that will answer, Control F Ward, right? And otherwise, keep posting feedback about what stuff you'd like to see changes to, and we'll look into it for the upcoming expansions.
Perfect. Well, let's make that 1 minute. People want to know if fishing rods will have crucible trees, Chris.
I'm not going to answer that. I'm going to let them work it out, right?
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much for your time, Chris. Thanks for
you're
the
welcome.
Q&A.
It's been great.
Pleasure as always.
Thanks so much.
All right. See you fun folks later. Bye-bye.
Alright, well I guess there we go. That's it for the stream. So, while that was going on, I was actually playing around with the Blazing Salvo. Yeah, I know. I'll be doing a video shortly on that too. Then I gotta read them and get my head around it. So, the question about Blazing Salvo that we were asking, right? With the changes that are coming in to having the sort of itemization, having a skill tree now, actually allows for things like Blazing Salvo Juggernaut to be a thing. So basically, I reworked my leadership price tree, balanced it so that, you can get strength and int matching, so leadership price could work potentially from league start, right? Void of that, you could still get it working at like 2.7 mil DPS in the first week. It's actually viable with the skill changes to play a Blazing Salvo Juggernaut, and if the shield's going to get buffed, you could have potentially a 350,000 effective hit pool, and with the life buff that's coming in for the 12% increased life if no life on an item, right, this uses a brass dome, then what that means is potentially I could build a 7k HP, maybe 6 or 7 mil DPS Blazing Salvo Juggernaut, which would be around 2000 HP regen per second. It would have glancing blows built into it, so as it is right now. But fundamentally, that would mean it would be almost unkillable. Just face tank everything. Now, taking out Ubers, potentially you could face tank Ubers. If I was to get Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh into the build, yeah, I reckon. If I was able to get Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh into the build and run Savagery, I think it is. So if I had Aspect Carnage, that would increase me by 1.8 mil. Potentially, I could, with the right wand, I could get somewhere up to 10 million DPS with Blazing Salvo on a Juggernaut, and just cheese my way through Delve all day long. That's with a 6.39 car speed. This is with one Awakened Jewel, 2 Awakened Jewels as well, but everything else pretty reasonably obtainable. Yeah, I actually think that this might be the goer right now. Because it seems like it'd be a lot of fun to play Blazing Salvo Jug right now, to be honest with you, as opposed to Ignite character, because this would be super tanky. It'd not do as much DPS, but it would be able to drop low tier Delve like an absolute beast. With this amount of survivability. Anyway, I'm gonna build test this week. and then I might do a bit of a theory build on this and just have an FYI disclaimer. This is at your own risk. But this actually looks like it might be somewhat viable. Anyway, I'll have a play with this and see how it goes. Anyway, I'll leave everyone there. There'll be a live stream on tonight. Build test, starting to build test this. Expect a bunch of videos to be coming out today. I'll be going through the patch notes shortly and doing a video on the patch notes. So I'll deep dive into that. I just need to read through and get my head around the changes, and then I'll do a what's a nerf and what's a buff. But I'll leave everyone to it, and I'll see you guys tonight, and we'll start Blazing Salvo jug testing tonight.